What do you need?
Alderman Tindem. Here. Alderman Rainey. Here. Alderman Burris. Here. Alderman Fisk. Here. Alderman Braithwaite. Here. That's it. Alderman Holmes, sorry.
We have a quorum. Welcome to the Monday, August 8th, 2011 meeting of the Evanston City Council. First item on the agenda is public announcements and proclamations by the mayor. Would U.S. Army Sergeant Kevin Ramon Dunn please come forward? And would Sergeant Dunn's family please come forward? Come on, all of you. I'm going to read a proclamation. All right, we got the whole family now. U.S. Army Sergeant Kevin Ramon Dunn Day. Whereas Sergeant Kevin Ramon Dunn has been a resident of Evanston since his birth at Evanston Hospital in 1983, and whereas Sergeant Dunn began his education at Kingsley's Head Start program and graduated from Chute Middle School in 1997, and whereas Sergeant Dunn participated in AAU basketball through junior high and co-pops basketball through high school, and whereas upon graduation from Evanston Township High School in 2001, Sergeant Dunn enlisted with the United States Army, dedicating his life to serve and protect our great nation and promote peace and understanding abroad. And whereas Sergeant Dunn was deployed to Iraq January through March 2004, November 2005 through November 2006, June 2008 through June 2009, and Afghanistan July 2010 through July 2011, and whereas Sergeant Dunn has attained the rank of an E6 sergeant within the United States Army and proudly represents Evanston, both at home and overseas. And whereas Sergeant Dunn has returned home from his 4th tour of duty in Iraq, now therefore I, Elizabeth B. Tisdall, Mayor of the City of Evanston, do hereby proclaim August 8th, 2011, as Sergeant Kevin Ramon Dunn Day in the City of Evanston in honor of Yeah, Wally's got it.
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
could we make certain that the sergeant gets a copy of the video of his appearance here?
Oh, that's a very good idea, Alderman Rainey. City manager will take care of that. My next announcement is this is National Yoga Month, and Evanston Yoga Day is a free outdoor yoga class on the lakefront at 8 a.m. on Sunday, September 18th. City manager, do you have public announcements?
Yes, Madam Mayor, members of the City Council, good evening. Several items. First, an announcement regarding the community picnic coming up on August the 28th. Mr. Gaynor is here with that.
Madam Mayor, members of the council, city manager, the Evanston residents are invited to the annual community picnic from noon until 5 on Sunday, August 28th, here at Ingram Park, right behind the Civic Center. There's going to be free games, entertainment, food. Back-to-school backpacks will be given out with school supplies for all the Evanston children, and we're looking forward to a great day and good weather. I invite you all. Thank you.
Next, Director of Public Works, Suzette Robinson's here to remind residents regarding our Labor Day trash pickups.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of the City Council. Suzette Robinson, Director of Public Works. For the September 5th Labor Day, there will be no trash collection that day whatsoever. All collections will occur one day later in the week, and the condo garbage and recycling collections will return to their normal schedule on Thursday. So they'll slide back a day for Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, and then Thursday they'll be back on their regular schedule for condos only. Thank you very much.
It's quite a while before we have our next council meeting. Actually, the next meeting is not until September the 12th, so we also have several other September events we'd like to tell you about. Adelita Hernandez from the City Manager's Office is here to talk about Paint Evanston Purple.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of the City Council, City Manager, and somewhere the City Clerk. I'm just here to tell you about our second annual Paint Evanston Purple event. It's going to be for the home opener, which is scheduled for September 10th. The game start is at 2:30 p.m., and there is going to be a lot of on-field recognition for different facets of Evanston. Additionally, tickets are half off that day for people who enter the code PURPLE when they purchase tickets for the game. And the Thursday prior to, which is September 8th, we will be holding a pep rally at Independence Park on Central Street. There's a lot of businesses that are helping us paint Evanston purple by doing promotions, 10% off, 15% off, and it's all on our website. If you go to cityofevanston.org/purple, you'll be able to see more details. So I just wanted to invite all of Evanston to come and join us for this really fun event. And I have hats from Northwestern for the elected officials here. So I have a poster. Sorry, I'm pretty loud, so you can hear me without a microphone. And
You people can't, though.
So here's a poster. I'll pass it around so you guys can see it.
And Adelita, why don't you just wait just a second before we pass out the hats.
Okay.
Also, that same weekend on Sunday, September the 11th, the community will be commemorating the 10th anniversary of the horrible tragedy that impacted the United States on September 11, 2001. Our Fire Chief, Greg Kleiber, is here to talk about the events that are being scheduled for that day.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, Mr. City Clerk, members of the City Council, and Evanston residents. I'm here this evening. This is the last council meeting until Sunday, September 11th. So I wanted to announce to the community that plans are underway to commemorate the tragic events that happened already 10 years ago. So what we're doing is the event will be held Sunday, September 11th at the Arrington Lakefront Lagoon. The community is invited to join local public safety members of the fire and law enforcement of this community, elected officials, and community partners to commemorate the anniversary of the attacks on September 11th, 2001. Participants and guests are asked to gather for this event at 8:45 a.m. on that morning. Members of police and fire clergy, along with public safety officials, and the mayor will give speeches. Music will also be provided. And something that I'm very proud of, this year we're going to have a special dedication on that day for an actual artifact from the World Trade Center. The city we have possession of an actual piece of steel from the World Trade Center, and we will be dedicating it on that morning. So I'm hoping everybody can make it, and we'll see you then. Thank you.
Thank you.
And Madam Mayor, there's one additional event that we're aware of also taking place on Sunday, September 11th, and that's an event sponsored by Peaceable Cities Evanston, and that will begin at 2 p.m. It's going to be a walk and talk. There'll be a community walk from the Dar es Sinai Mosque at 2045 Brown Avenue, and that walk will then continue to the Jewish Reconstructionist Congregation of Evanston at 303 Dodge Avenue. In addition to the Peaceable Cities Evanston, a whole variety of other community organizations are also co-sponsors of that event, and so the city, through our Human Relations Commission, is involved in this event, and certainly we would encourage folks, if they can, to attend the event at the Lagoon in the morning and then participate in this event in the afternoon beginning at 2 p.m. And Madam Mayor, that concludes my announcements.
Thank you. City Clerk, do you have communications?
Yes, I do, Madam Mayor. If I can find them. That one. Yes. I have a communication from AT&T concerning their ATT Uverse, effective September 26th. September 16th, they will be upgrading their U200 package, effective September 30th. In the Chicago, Illinois area, be the Mega TV channels 3008 will no longer be available on Uverse TV service. Effective October 6, 2011, NIC 2 and channel 315 will be moving to channel 316. And Nicktoons channel 316 will be moving to channel 318. Also, AT&T's contracts with programmers for the content displayed on the Uverse TV service periodically expire. If it is a reasonable agreement and it cannot be reached with such programmers, they will no longer have the rights to carry their programming on Uverse TV. For all other announcements or updates, the citizens will be receiving notification in the mail. That's all I have for tonight, Mayor.
Thank you. Next is citizen comment. Because of the number of speakers, each speaker will have 1 minute and 40 seconds. I'm going to read names 4 at a time, and when you hear your name, please come get in line to speak and give your name and address when you speak. Kevin O'Connor, Linda Balla, Leanne Caston, Len Lampkin. Go ahead, Mr. O'Connor.
Thank you. Kevin O'Connor, 1227 and a half Isabella. Agenda item 03, facade improvement and rebate of $10,000 for Oceanique. The building's owner, business address is in Northbrook, not Evanston. Oceanique is a renter. Contractor used is from Chicago, not Evanston. The awning contract went to Robert Bain and Skokie for $4,060 versus Evanston Awning, who bid $3,786. I'd like to congratulate everybody here on privatizing profit with our tax dollars to businesses that reside outside of Evanston. Agenda item 04, funding for the North Shore Convention and Visitors Bureau, $65,564. Citizens are being taxed twice. The state of Illinois matches $374,000, $431, paid by municipalities for a total budget of $748,862 for the Bureau. The Bureau is based in Skokie, not Evanston. In spite of one City of Evanston employee and 5 other Evanston people on the 24-member board of the Bureau, the fiscal year salaries and benefits paid to the five only, full-time employees was $368,270. It's being raised in fiscal year 2011 to $402,217, a raise of approximately 8%. Wouldn't any of us like to have a raise of 8%? I think both of these items are shameful.
Mr. O'Connor, I need you to wrap up.
I know, Madam Mayor, and that I don't think my minute 40 is up, but anyhow, it's shameful on this council's behalf and the Economic Development Committee when they can't fund a library for $57,000 in the south side of Evanston, and you're giving away money like
you're
this.
at 2 minutes.
You know what, Madam Mayor, I'm finishing my comments. You're very loose with your clock with everybody else. You'll give more time when they're positive, but when it's something that criticizes this council, you'll take it away. You need to be more consistent. Thank you.
My name is Linda Balla. I live at 800 Elgin Road. I'm a resident of the First Ward. I would like to speak to privatization under the category of budget priorities. Much has been said about privatizing waste hauling to Groot and then having to pay an extra $700,000. But few people know that the nighttime janitorial service of our main library has also been privatized, and what a disaster that has been. During the day, the library has a dedicated crew of city workers who live in the community and care about the library. But the private night crew does not live near and does not seem to care. It leaves behind crumbs and dirt due to outmoded equipment that cannot even get close to the desks or the bookshelves. The crumbs have resulted in a terrible mouse problem, even in the summer. The private crew has left French fries on the floor overnight, has left Kleenex in the bathroom for a month, and milkshake-splashed computer screen stayed that way for an entire week until a frustrated library aide finally cleaned it off herself. Wiping down and dusting does not even seem to be part of this private company's agenda. One wonders what it even does at night. This lax commitment to public service is a foreshadowing of what privatization would mean for Evanston.
Ms. Bell, I need you to wrap up, please.
Our city workers have partnered with the Evanston community to form a Community Labor Alliance for Public Service. Our goal is to prevent any future privatization, to educate the community about the benefits of keeping public services in-house. As part of our mission,
Ms. Balla, you're at 2 minutes and over.
We have run a petition drive, so I will give you, Mayor, our petitions tonight, and we also have copies for all of the aldermen. They say that we, the undersigned citizens, would like to keep would like the council to keep city services in-house. Thank you.
My name is Leanne Caston. I have been an Evanston resident for 37 years at exactly the same address, 1030 Asbury. And I'm here today to discuss the issue of privatization in this city. Despite the obvious effort at public hearings tonight and the clear effort at transparency, I'm totally against the move. And I say so for the following reasons. Privatization has become a national trend as more and more corporations have decided this is a very good way to make profits. It's the old formula, privatize the profits and socialize the cost. In this era of profit-making above all else, in this era of Supreme Court decisions favoring corporations rather than the individual, in this era where profits transcend even human welfare and safety, in this era where many municipalities are in dire financial shape, privatization has become the way. Most efforts at privatization result in higher fees for residents. It's never cheap. Once the contract is signed, the new service provider can and will raise the fees. Who pays? Of course, the residents. The effort will not guarantee a real budget aid. In a short-term effort, where signing the contract will infuse the budget with immediate cash, in the long term, as in our famous Chicago parking meters, the city budget is still in the red, while the contractors, including Morgan Stanley Investment and an Arab country, are making millions. The effort is a clear union busting. This has become another national trend and one that will prove quite destructive to the American worker if the trend continues. Private contractors are able to fire city workers and hire their own employees at far less pay rate.
Leanne, I need you to wrap up, please.
Okay, 2 more points, please. In short, I cannot understand nor personally accept a trend that will in the long run only be a boon for more profits for corporations that have been planning these moves for a far longer time than citizens know. Over the 10 years when my husband died, I considered seriously a move back to Chicago, where I still have family. I decided against this move because despite the mantra that Chicago is the city that works, these days it really does not. It's Evanston, with whatever problems this city may have, that really, truly works. Why in the world would anyone want to change that?
Good evening. My name is Leonard Lampkin. I live at 835 Ridge Avenue in Evanston. My children went through the Evanston Public Schools, a public school system. When we talk about privatization, where will it end? In fact, I would say we should roll back the previous privatization for Groot picking up our garbage and other stuff, because it's the city workers, the AFSCME members, who have to go behind them and pick up the trash that they forget, that drops off the truck, or the stuff that they just don't want to lift and put in their truck. It's the city workers that have always kept Evanston clean and Evanston safe. So we start with sanitation. I would like to ask the city manager, there are associations, folks, that can run the city. Why not privatize your office, sir? Being honest, why not privatize the whole way we run the city of Evanston? There are cities and towns that have started to do that. What are we going to privatize next? The police department? The fire department? Just like some towns in the South that privatized their jails, their juvenile correction system, and we all know what happened. The young people get abused, the system doesn't work. We have to stop this trend for privatization. You want to save money? Stop giving breaks to developers. $40,000 I read for the developer at Maine and Chicago to do a study. $40,000 of my money? I'm unemployed. How about giving me a break on my Evanston taxes? Why are we giving breaks to developers? And I want to remind you, this ain't Wisconsin, folks. We vote. We vote, and we will vote, just like the folks in Chicago did, who voted out aldermen who didn't stand with the working people of their city. Thank you very much.
Next is Elliot Zashin, David Matusik, Sean Pestka, and Junad Rizki.
Start. My name is Elliot Zashin. I live at 715 Asbury Avenue. I've lived in Evanston for the last 15 years. In the last few weeks, I've been learning about the city's recent effort to find public services to privatize. Although this may well be at a very preliminary stage, I'm concerned that the city may move hastily in this direction without fully examining the pros and cons of privatization. Obviously, most Evanston residents are concerned about tax increases, and anything that sounds as if it will reduce city expenditures may seem to be a positive step. However, there are important issues for the city and the council to consider and many questions to answer before embarking on the privatization of any particular service and city services in general. Just a few of these. When a city contracts with a private company to provide a service, it gives up a degree of control over the quality of the service provided and the future costs. Even putting in quality controls and other criteria for monitoring still leaves the city with an important responsibility to make sure that the contract is really fulfilled. This is a real cost to the city. Second, when important services are outsourced, the city is likely to lose institutional knowledge it has built over many years. This can mean the city's oversight is weakened vis-a-vis the contractor, and it also can mean that the city is not in a position easily to reassume a service that it has outsourced. Finally, another important consideration is that our employees of the city have a relationship with the community that's not likely to be duplicated by the employees of a contractor, particularly when that contractor is not based in Evanston. The city manager apparently has drawn up a long list of possible public services that might be privatized. The council needs to establish criteria to determine whether a public service is appropriate for privatization. How vital is the service to the community? How much
Mr.
of a saving?
Zation, I'm sorry, I need you to wrap up.
I will wrap it up. How much of a saving would privatization produce over what period of years? Will there be competitive bidding? Are there many vendors who would compete for this? What are the costs of layoffs if they're necessary? What institutional knowledge will be lost? How will the city monitor contracts? All these things need to be given serious consideration in general and with respect to any particular services that might be slated for privatization. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Dave Matusek. I'm technically not a resident, but I speak for many of my fellow workers who are also may be allowed to speak. Is that okay? I thought it was for residents only. Okay. I just want to go over a quick history. Groot has now struck twice in the last 5 years. The city of Evanston has never gone on strike. Groot crippled city's businesses and residents, and their reward was a 5-year, 25% increase in pay. What if in the next snowfall, if we got 20 inches, the city workers called you up and said, you know what, we're not moving one flake of snow until we get a 25% raise? What would happen to the city then? We have saved the city well over $4 million in the last 3 years by wage freezes, furlough days, no raises or deferred raises. We took on a huge family deductible and doubled our co-pays. Why did we do that? Because we understood the city's financial situation. Groot has already hit you for an additional $700,000 in renegotiations. And I want to remind you, they still have 3 years left on their contract with a 15% raise coming their way. How do you think they're going to pay their employees? They're going to raise fees. Groot asked Skokie for a 43% increase during a recession, and they got 12%. Not bad. Do you think I'm going to get a 12% raise? I don't think so. Why? Because I work for the city, and by that, you guys get to control the cost. Lose city workers and privatize, you lose power, control, and flexibility. And you will lose money. Every time you need an immediate action, you will pay dearly for it. Has anyone in this room ever had to call a plumber after 6 p.m. or on a weekend and seen the rate?
I need you to wrap up, please.
You got it.
Thank you.
So in closing, we have been loyal workers to the city, and we have worked with you. We've done everything we can to help you guys out in tough times. My question is, where does your loyalty lie?
My name's Sean Pesca, lived at 1520 Washington Street my whole life. I don't think I need to go over facts and figures. I'm sure they'll be stated to you many more times with however many people left on the list. Just a couple of thoughts. If you go to the strategic plan online for the city, the first line in there is creating the most livable city in America. I ask you, how are we going to create the most livable city in America if you take away the services that make the place where people want to live? You look at the agenda tonight, evaluation of services. The services are there because the people need the services. They make the city of Evanston. So I ask the council, the residents, please don't sit by while they one by one take apart what makes Evanston Evanston. Thank you.
Thank you, and congratulations. You were the only speaker within the time limit.
Okay, first I'm going to speak to this water rate study. This is a total waste of taxpayer money, $22,000, basically probably about a third of a worker's salary. The last study this city did wanted a 40% water increase. The council approved 10%, and there was no discussion. This is a total waste of taxpayer money. The capital plan is a mess. That's how it was justified in P&D. The capital plan of that water department's a mess. $3 million is transferred out of the city water funds, taken over to the general fund. Basically, ratepayers are paying for that, and they're paying for the capital. It's a joke. As I said at P&D, if any study has to be done, it has to be done to the total profitability of that operation, because I believe Evanston ratepayers are paying for the other customers. My next item is pretty quick. The license plate recognition system. It appears to be a big joke and a waste of money, claiming 2 staff members are gone. And the council, and it keeps saying this has been approved in the budget. It hasn't been approved, but it seems to be in 2012 we're going to have a license plate recognition system. There's no data in there. There's nothing that justifies it. It's an outrageous kind of thing going on here with the money. And that's really all I have to say, because there's plenty more to say. But, I mean, there's a style of management here that has a problem, and that it is assuming that certain things are being done. And they are not being done because they have not been approved. And that's not acceptable. And if anyone worked for me like that, they wouldn't work for me long, because that's just unacceptable.
Next is Ted Loda, Cindy Levitt, Bill Geiger, and Dorothy Head.
I wish I could. Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of the council. I had the privilege of coming to meetings here on behalf of my brothers and sisters of AFSCME for more than 20 years. I came to know them as people as well as employees. I offer to you that the question is, can you afford privatization of the city of Evanston? And I'd say to you, the answer is a resounding no. If commitment and dedication and knowledge are meaningful, you can't afford to privatize the services that these men and women have done, and that AFSCME has been proud to represent them since 1968. Things were rather tough back then, but nonetheless, they will continue to do that because they are dedicated servants who understand the true meaning of working in the public service.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Cindy Levitt, 1645 Church Street. I'm here to change the topic to Veolia Waste Transfer Station, but I do want to say I do support our union workers here in Evanston. You do a great job, and I also am against privatization. So just thought I'd say that. The topic that I'm here to speak about, there were about 10 to 12 speakers that did come to the meeting, the Administration and Public Works, to speak on this topic of Veolia. So many of you have heard this, but we in the community do believe that Veolia needs to relocate, hopefully of their own free will, when they understand that there are people in Evanston, including our wonderful city council, who doesn't feel it's appropriate to have a big garbage dump right next to residential homes, next to a park where kids are playing soccer and basketball, meaning Mason Park, next to the high school, 2 blocks from the high school. And I encourage you to do everything within your own power to help encourage them to relocate on their own. We were also talking about the odor, the stench that we who live close to it, I live right next door, have to endure on a pretty much daily basis, including the unknowing factor of what is actually in the odor. Is it lead? Is there asbestos? What are they actually dumping that comes through there? And also the noise ordinance, which the city does have, Veolia feels they're exempt from. They used to start around 5:36 a.m. 6 days a week. Now, through some negotiations, they start at 6:30 a.m., but that still is earlier than the noise ordinance. And Alderman Rainey, you had brought up what ordinances do you have currently that you could be a little bit more aggressive about. I would like to see if there's a way that we can start calling 311 with our complaints when they wake us every morning before the Evanston's ordinance kicks in. So to wrap up, I just do want to look at this as a health issue. Many of my neighbors have young children, live right next to the garbage transfer station, and the garbage I can see out my window, it sometimes piles up to almost to the roof, which is a couple stories high before they offload it into the trucks. They also are permitted and occasionally do leave the trucks overnight.
Cindy, I do need you to wrap up.
Okay, thank you. And I also look at it as an environmental justice issue. It's not by accident that it's located where it is on the west side of Evanston. Thank you very much.
I, too, was at the earlier meeting, but I would like to read this letter from, I'm sorry, my name is Dorothy Head. I live at 1823 Laurel for the last 35 years. I'm in the 5th Ward. I would like to read this letter from Janet Alexander Davis. It is dated August 8th, 2011, to the Alderman of the Evanston City Council, City Clerk Rodney Green, and City Manager, and pardon me, Mr. Manager, if I mispronounce your last name.
Like Bob quits his job.
Okay, then you pronounced it. Regarding Viola, formerly active service. My name is Janet Alexander Davis, and I reside at 1726 Leland Avenue. I was born in Evanston more than 68 years ago and have not lived in any other city or state. I know that some people cringe when speakers state how long they have lived in Evanston, but saying that adds value and longevity to live under a system and their rules. Any time lived here is valued and should be listened to with respect. I'm not happy with the existence and the usage of the Viola property located near Church Street and Darrell Avenue. In the past, the former active service employed many Evanston residents, and their process of handling garbage seemed to be different. A transfer dump in the middle of the residential neighborhood located near a large high school and the public Mason Park, which serves so many children every day, is too much to bear now. I live on the west side of Evanston, and each time I pass the Veolia dump, I smell the odor and think there is nothing I can do about it. I'm not happy with that realization. If you or anyone has done the same thing by letting this go, you can change your mind and welcome the action to change the things you can. I watch most city council meetings to educate myself on the system I live under. I hear some people come and state they are speaking for the community. I'm not sure about that because they never asked me what I thought or would be willing for me not to agree on all things. But a few is enough to work together. To me, real learning comes from being open to new ideas, approaches, and collaborations. Evanston City Council, all I know is I can produce at least 15 people's names who are not happy with Veolia being in our neighborhood.
I do need you to wrap it up. We could copy the letter and have it distributed to the council.
I have 2 more lines. Easily more names would be possible with additional effort. If there were space for this dump, it would not exist in Central Park in North Evanston. Do not let it continue to exist in the neighborhood at Church Street and Darrell Avenue. With appreciation, Janet Alexander Davis. Thank you.
Madam Mayor, members of the City Council, my name is Bill Geiger. I'm CEO of the McGaw YMCA and also an Evanston resident at 316 Ashland in the 8th Ward. I come tonight to thank you, specifically Alderman Braithwaite, Mr. Robert Reese, for putting forward the application to name a stretch of Emerson Street after the Emerson Street Branch YMCA. To members of the Planning and Development Committee, I appreciate your forwarding this to the Council. And to all Council members, I appreciate your consideration of this honor of the Emerson Street Branch YMCA, which for decades served generations of African American Evanstonians, has a tremendous legacy of service, which to this day inspires the work of the McGaw YMCA to serve all Evanston residents. I would also like to speak on behalf of the naming of a short stretch of Maple Street in honor of Jay Rogasich. I appreciate your consideration of both of these actions, and thank you very much.
Thank you. Next, we have Kristen White, Betty Esther, Linda Balla, who already spoke, so I'm going to regard you as having spoken, Leanne Caston, and Mike Vasilko. Leanne spoke also, all right. They've signed up twice. Mike Vasilko and John Bushnell.
Yes. My name is Kristen White. I live at 1801 Hartree Avenue in the 5th Ward. I'm here tonight to urge the council to authorize the mayor to submit comments to the EPA regarding the Veolia permit submission. I don't know what the mayor's going to say in her comments, but I hope that those comments oppose the permit.
They will.
Oh, good. Yay! Okay. Me and my neighbors strongly feel there should be no modifications to the site that might allow for future expansion, given their dishonest history of misrepresentation and not doing what they say they will do. I hope tonight in your discussion you'll provide more explanation on the issue. And also, I would like to suggest that the city would review all of the ordinances that might be brought to bear to the site for better enforcement and oversight and compliance, and educate the residents in the neighborhood so we understand what we need to be reporting to the city on a regular basis through 311. I also would like to recommend to the council that they work with local residents and perhaps some sort of expert to review EPA waste transfer station best practices, which Veolia does not comply with and didn't even know about when it was brought to their attention last fall. And those best practices have been around for years. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
My name is Betty Esther. I stay at 2831 Church Street. I want to comment on ordinance 68-0-11, the solid waste transfer station fee. I read the documents that was in the city package, and it wasn't clear to me as why we are adding health, safety, and environment to an ordinance that deals with the weight of trucks that are going into a transfer station. Didn't get that, didn't understand that. Then it kind of reflected on where was the staff of the city council, the legal staff, when Alderman Joe Kent did raise issues about, at that time it was Onyx, on the health, safety, and environment of that establishment. The residents that lived 5 feet, 5,000, we wasn't that many. We don't have as many that is here now that is dealing with the odor. We didn't have no one. Where were you? Why? So I'm still puzzled about why we are adding a health and safety to a ordinance that deals with something traveling into a station just by weight. Where were you then when we needed you and we possibly could have moved that transfer station out? But they did not. We met with 2 staff people here. That was Jim Walensky and one other staff person that's no longer with the city. They worked with the people at Onyx and everything, and then came up with the building. Then they sprayed. The odor went down. We have asked for them to do other things. They did other things. So you have neighbors say they don't. You have people that say they do.
Ms.
But
Esther,
tell
I
me,
need you to
how
wrap
can
up.
someone that lives in Carroll Stream smell the odor of Viola on Church Street in Evanston? Thank you.
My name is Mike Vasilko, 2728 Reese Avenue in Evanston. Within the last week, there was a Tribune article regarding Lake Michigan and Lake Erie water, specifically, I guess, some chemical that they're finding that potentially is a cancer-causing chemical. And then shortly after that article was written, I believe I read a report that Evanston tested their water and found that the same chemical to be at an acceptable level or below an acceptable level. Well, I know in Chicago it's been reported to be at a high level. The lake is a lake, it's water, it moves. I guess I was hoping somebody from the water department can explain, why it is our water we're finding it is acceptable, or we have no concern about the water we're getting from the same source. And if somebody knows actually where this chemical is coming from, I'd appreciate that too.
Thank you.
And Madam Mayor, members of the council, there have been 2 recent articles in the Tribune regarding water quality. One dealt with lead a couple of days ago, and then I believe, Mr. Vasilko, you're referring to an article that appeared yesterday in the Tribune. So we have provided information to the community regarding the lead. We're working on additional information for the issues that were raised in the Tribune article yesterday, and we should have that out in the next day or two.
John Bushnell, 1805 Crane Street. I'm here on the matter of the police outpost in Dominic's. We've been here and expressed our feelings on this before. I want to begin by saying that I credit the good intentions of those who worked to bring a police outpost to Dominic's. I understand what they were doing. I want to explain why our problem is actually the City Council's business. In the first place, there's the matter of liquor control, or controlling the vending of liquor. You all know the story now. Dominic's had no liquor license when it opened. Then it got permission to sell alcohol from a kind of a cage. And then it broke out of the cage and set up its liquor on aisles close to a door right along the route that hundreds of high school students take when they leave school every day. If Dominic's present display of alcohol fits within the rules that govern alcoholic sales in the city of Evanston, then those rules need to be reconsidered by the City Council. The second matter is the use of a policeman as a super security guard at Dominic's. Again, I understand and respect the intention, but this involves a use of a public resource to do a job that a private corporation should be doing for itself, but has called on you to help with. This is a terrible precedent. The City Council at least needs to discuss how public resources can be used to assist private corporations. You may decide that there are certain circumstances under which this is justifiable.
Mr. Bushnell, I'm sorry, I need you to wrap up.
If you promise to take these matters before the council.
Thank you.
Otherwise, I'll be back again.
You will be welcome anytime. Javoyd Simmons, Blair Hull, DeKel Fonda, and D.R. Cannon are next.
Javoyd Simmons, live on 1220 Darrell Avenue in Evanston. I'm here on the same matter, the police outpost within Dominic's. Over the past month or so, we've had a couple meetings that are truly community meetings that address the issue of having the post in Dominic's. I know there had been earlier discussions about this, but they really didn't involve the community. It was aspects of business organizations or companies that were there. So what we have seen out of all of this is, to say fairly, that there's a fair amount of disagreement, divisiveness on this whole issue. And as I look and hear the explanations behind it, where we talk about we're trying to limit the use of alcohol or stealing of alcohol by young folks, I still do not see that the solution is matching the problem. I still don't understand what Dominic's has done to mitigate this issue. And that being the case, and it just seems that this is not transparent, that there are more at play here than is being shared. And that's a big concern for me. I feel that we're all grown-ups here, but the explanations seem to be aimed at children who cannot understand the underlying issues. And I would love to see a broader understanding of what has happened here. I'm interested in what Dominic's may have said to the city in terms of what they want us to do and what that means if we don't do certain things for them. There are pressures here, and I also understand that Chief Eddington has said that this decision is solely his. I disagree. As John just said, this is a huge matter where we're bringing public resources to support a corporation. I do not think that this is the way to go. I think that there's a lot of discussion that needs to happen with the council because it does set a dangerous precedent. I also believe that for the council not to take this on as a full issue, is really a cop-out, because I think it's really that important. I think it determines direction that this city may go in the future. So I think we need to sit down and really have a good discussion, very public, very transparent about what's going on here. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Reverend Blair Hull. I live at 1215 Dodge, and I am here also to talk about the outpost at Dominic's. One person could not be here tonight, and that's Nancy Floy. In our neighborhood, we really need new businesses. And as a result of some of the comments and some of the stuff that has been said by people on the council and by people in the police department, her clientele are getting scared. She hires over 35 practitioners to work at Heartwood Center. And one has left because, I apologize for saying this, but because our alderman said that it was a dangerous neighborhood. And she is having people call her to the number of 30 a day saying they don't know if they can come to Dempster and Dodge to take advantage of those services because it's a dangerous neighborhood. And I would really like her to be honored. She sold her house, she moved her business. She is the new businesses that we're looking for in our neighborhood, and the outpost is really decimating her. She's petrified she's going to lose her business. And I think that the outpost is a bad idea. If you walk in there, I'd love for you to go take a look at it. It really feels like jail in Dominic's. It's pretty scary. And I had a talk with the manager about this, and I too asked for numbers and statistics, and he said that it wasn't all teenagers, that some of it's adults. And I think the teenagers are getting kind of the short shrift on this. But I would just like to go on record and say the kids really, really matter in Evanston. They matter to all of us. And if the kids walking from school to home is such a big problem, we need to do something for them. And I would really like to see a little more attention paid to maybe a drop-in center at the shopping center for them. Thanks for listening to me.
Thank you.
DeKel Fonda, I'm a 30-year resident of the 2nd Ward, and I'm also here to speak about the outpost. It's sort of interesting that we're here on the evening that we've begun a discussion about privatization of public services. I stand with you. I am totally against privatization of public services, but I'm also very much against putting our public resources inside a private corporation, which is exactly what is happening at Dominic's. And we have been here before to talk about this. We really hope that the council will put us on the agenda so we can have a full discussion. I want to clarify, and I think that some of you may think that the community has had a voice in this decision. We have not. There were 3 meetings that were mentioned that were with business owners, a few. The first meeting early in June was with 12 business owners. We invited the chief to come and talk to us about the surprise that we found out about, that this outpost was about to be built. They were business owners, not residents. Most of them don't live in the community. The second meeting was with 3 business owners and the chief and a PR person from Dominic's. And the third meeting was with the chief, the alderman, a PR person from Dominic's, and no business people, no community people ever have had a chance to have their voice heard. We had hoped that we would have community meetings, full community meetings. And we have had, as Javoy said, we've had 2 wonderful community meetings after the outpost was approved and after it was built. And 60 people came to the last ward meeting to talk about this. We waited until 10 o'clock because that's how strongly people feel about it. There are a lot of questions about this from a community that is a strong, proactive, engaged community that when the shooting happened at McDonald's, we organized within one evening. Mayor Tisdall, Alderman Holmes, you were with us. You stood with 120 people across from McDonald's. We stood against the violence. We prayed, we meditated, we stood arm to arm against what happened there.
I need you to wrap up, please.
So there's a sign at the outpost right now that says Evanston Police and community in partnership working together. I would like to revise that sign because this is the truth. It really is Evanston, City of Evanston, with the police department, and Dominic's in partnership. There is no community. And I ask that you bring the community back so we can all speak about this together.
DeKalb, I really need to wrap up. Thank you.
I concede my time to Mr. Cannon and whatever's left to my mother.
Thank you.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, ladies and gentlemen of the Council. I wish I could say it was a pleasure to speak to you tonight, but it's not. My clients are Dr. Padma Rao and B.K. Rao of 2246 Sherman Avenue, longtime residents. The interesting thing about videotape, Madam Mayor, it can be replayed time and time again. And I've replayed the tapes of my clients appealing to this city council. And let me tell you, Madam Mayor, there are some very serious problems with the way she's been treated. And I would suggest this council really take a long, hard look at the Illinois Open Meetings Act, 5 ILCS 120/2-06, small paren G, close paren. She can be required to only do that which is ruled and recorded. Are the arbitrary rulings by the chair recorded prior to any statements? If so, I would like to know where, Madam Mayor. Furthermore, arbitrary changes of style, if you would, interpretations and extensions of the rules can be construed as prior restraint on free speech. And I've reviewed these tapes very carefully, Madam, as I have reviewed my client's testimony before this council on numerous occasions prior to her giving those testimonies. I would suggest this council take a long, hard look at 42 U.S. Code 1983, 1985, 1986, and 1988. Because I would submit that there can be a genuine pattern developing here that is anything but encouraging of free speech. It does, in fact, look like prior restraint of free speech. And I don't think this council wants to find itself on the short end of a civil rights litigation. One more thing. It seems to be an open, festering boil that this city council chooses to ignore. Conflict of interest with Holland and Knight. I was interested to see that in the last, I believe it was August 1st meeting, that this council determined that Mr. Holland and Knight was no longer employed, but they had been employed for lobbying services. Government federal advocacy, I believe was the term. Interesting admission, because that means there's no longer an attorney-client privilege with regard to those activities, and those activities are now subject to FOIA, Freedom of Information requests. I would point out to this city council that this city's record and reputation before Lisa Madigan, Attorney General, for failure to timely comply with FOIA requests is not the best. I would suggest that this be attended to on a more timely basis and in full interest of all disclosure, exactly what was the money paid for if it was not legal fees, and how was that not legal services? Because I suspect Holland and Knight treated it exactly that way. Now, I would suggest this council ask of its council a complete evaluation of the Illinois rules for professional conduct.
Mr. Cannon, you need to wrap up.
1.8, 1.9, 1.10. You might find the analysis quite illuminating. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you.
B.K. Rao, 2246 Sherman Avenue. By now, it is apparent that the Kendall property resubdivision you all passed is thoughtless. It is going to be a great loss to the environment and the safety of the neighborhood, as it involves the mass killing of trees and the bad configuration of the alley. Even more disturbing is the role played by an alderman in pushing this unworthy project. She assured the developer's lawyer that the project will go through no matter what the citizens comment. The same alderman's son works for Holland and Knight, which took money from the taxpayers of Evanston, representing the city, and then represented the developer against the city. When this fact is brought to the light, your lame attempt to discredit my daughter is an example of your abuse of power. If anybody wants to know what I am talking about, I suggest you revisit the video of August 1st council meeting. Instead of answering your question, your lawyer attacked my daughter and you approved it. If this is how taxpayers are treated, then it has a chilling effect on freedom of speech, and a dictatorship is in the making here in Evanston. Finally, I do not know how many other schools you and Alderman Fisk are dropped out of, but you certainly dropped out of the most important schools of all, the school of responsibility to taxpayers as elected officials. I suggest you both go home and enjoy the golden Ponzi. I will be back.
Thank you. Mr. Johnson?
I was so busy admiring the student of Gandhi that I kind of forgot. My name is Bennett Johnson. I live at 708 Washington for several years and in the city for a long, long time. I support the efforts in opposing privatization and removing viola, and certainly I'm happy to be a former high wire president at Emerson YMCA. My concern is decision making. I think that this is part of the problem. I find it very interesting. As some of you know, I've been involved in advocacy for civil rights for a long time. It's kind of refreshing to realize that race is still an issue, but it's not the primary issue to come before the city councils. So that's a change. But we talk about 9/11, and I, of course, used to work with Muhammad Ali, and I've traveled in the Middle East, and I've seen people who are religiously motivated. I understand what that means. In capitalism, I consider myself a socialist, but in capitalism, the motivation for decision making is money. That's what causes people to make decisions. I have extensive political experience, both as an independent, working with, as some of you know, Harold Washington was a very close friend of mine for many years. And vote acquisition is a motivation in politics, either as an independent or as a member of the regular organization. Except when money influences decision making. So in government, money influences decision making in one of two ways: as an out and out bribe, or as an interest in the corporate community over against the individual. So the question about Dominic's, and that's what's so confusing, it's not logical. It is not logical, either from a security point of view, because all you have to do is take the license away, or set it up like it was before. But to give them a private police force made of Evanston police is not logical. It's not logical.
Mr. Johnson, I do need you to wrap up.
No, I'm wrapping up. I'm saying that the city council members who have a vote should seriously consider whether they're following in a Judas goat toward a slaughter based upon someone else's interest, corporate or personal interest, in making a wrong and illogical decision. Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes citizen comment. Alderman Rainey, could we have the consent agenda? Oh, sorry, we are indeed. That was a good try. City Manager, could we have a special order of business?
Yes, Madam Mayor, members of the council. We're here this evening to give you an update as to where we stand with our budget preparation discussion for fiscal 2012. I have some comments. So you'll also be hearing from Mr. Lyons and Mrs. Earl. we can go to the next slide. We're going to talk about the priority-based budgeting process that we have gone through, the value matrix that we have developed, and the scoring that has been done, a review of the service change ideas that we brought to you back in May, some discussion regarding comparisons with other like communities, and then also to talk a little bit about the roadmap as we move forward for a hopeful budget adoption by the City Council at the end of November. As you all know, that we began a process back in March to talk about the budget for fiscal year 2012-20 and 2013, with the understanding that we were looking at deficits in both those years and that difficult decisions would be required to balance those budgets. Mr. Lyons in a moment will talk a little bit about where we think we are as far as looking at deficits not only for 12 but for 13. And we're also recommending to you that the Council consider an additional $2 million shift from the general fund to pay for capital projects. We have a great unmet need in the community for investment in infrastructure, and that coupled with our debt limits, I think it's important that we look at making a permanent shift of money from the general fund for those capital projects. The City undertook a community outreach effort in May to solicit feedback on issues the City should address in the budget process. That led to the creation of a list of 39 areas which we brought to you in the 1st of May to examine for service changes. In addition, we committed to at that time to begin a priority-based budgeting process looking at each of the City services and comparing them to a series of benchmarks. We spent the last 3 months evaluating the service change ideas and prioritization of City services, and we're here this evening with the results of that work. There's a lot of information. The document that we have with the detail is over 400 pages, and we've gone to that effort because we think it's important for you and for the community to understand in very great detail how we do what we do, and also to give you the updates as to what we're looking at as far as service changes. The evaluation of those service changes remains a work in progress, and looking at city services by priority is a different approach for Evanston. We'll share it with you this evening, but I hope this is the first of many discussions where we can focus on community priorities and then focus on how best to allocate our resources with those priorities. I think it will take some time to reorient our thinking and evaluation of the budget in those terms. So over the last 3 months, what do you think we have learned so far? Let me give you my thoughts on what I believe we've learned so far. One, that the 39 service change ideas are really all over the map. Many of them have the potential to save the city significant upfront financial costs. However, what are the other indirect costs in addition to any upfront savings? You've heard from many public speakers, many of our own city staff members about that, and I join them in their concerns about that. And I think it's important that we look at what are the indirect costs in addition to any upfront changes. What are the impacts to Evanston's quality of life in making those changes? I believe that some of these 39 service change ideas will be able to be included in the fiscal 2012 proposed budget. Some may have promised to do in pieces, and some may not work at all. And I think it's important to understand that there are various categories, and we'll begin the discussion this evening. Secondly, some of the 39 service changes that were proposed in May have caused quite a community dialogue since then. And quite honestly, for that I say hooray. Democracy only works when people are engaged in the process, and I believe it's my responsibility to bring all reasonable ideas forward for discussion. The discussion and passion caused by some of the already the discussions we've had over the last couple of months really help in evaluating their impact on our community standards. And I also think that the absence of some discussion of some of these items is also interesting to look at. And then finally, the idea at looking at the city services based on community priorities is an interesting process. It's tough to put a number to all of our varied programs to evaluate them side by side, but your staff has done that. However, the exercise is only academic unless the community engages to evaluate and comment on the rankings. With agreement to the priorities, then resources should be shifted to those services that are high priorities, and those of lower priority should face further scrutiny. So we'll walk through the information that we have for you this evening, and really this will then lead us to the next phase of reaching out to Evanston residents regarding the information we've gathered. So with those preliminary comments, I'd like to ask Marty Lyons too many titles to mention, but he is here this evening to give you an update as to where we see our projected deficits for 12 and for 13. And if you go to the next slide.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of council, Clerk Green, City Manager Bob Quitz. I just have one slide to go through at the beginning because it sets the table for one of the more mundane reasons that we are also looking at this. We are looking at changes in service delivery models for many good reasons on a subjective basis, but one of the reasons that we're looking at them is our projections with what we have now changed. This table in May said 1.4 million, not 2.1 million. We don't see, based on the final audited numbers for 10-11, we ended the year in a slight deficit. By that I mean about 0.5%, so under $500,000. But we were projecting about a $300,000 surplus. So with that change, that starts us off in a little bit different picture. So we're looking at 2.1 million or 4.1 million when we look at the operating deficit and trying to get revenues available for capital improvements. We can't stress enough that second bullet point up there about getting the money together for capital improvements. As many of you know, we're looking at some major capital works to our facilities or potentially looking at other service delivery models, whether it's noise or any of our other facilities, because of the cost of maintaining those facilities. So we need to get into a situation where we are not borrowing for our ongoing capital, our roads, our sidewalks, our alleys, and get into a pay-as-you-go model. And this is a first effort at trying to identify what will it take to get there. So I'd be happy to answer any questions regarding the general fund summary. The 2013 is just a projection out with the same multipliers. If you may recall, what we're looking at is a 2% increase in revenues and a 4% increase in expenses from our current full year picture. So that's where we come up with that 2.1 million. And then when you do that again for the following year, you of course end up with a slightly bigger deficit. This is in recognition of what we're seeing as far as standard wage increases, and also before any of our negotiations or before any of our budget reviews have taken place for 2012 or 2013. So I wouldn't call this a worst-case scenario, but it is a scenario with all of our costs loaded in as if we were doing our work as we did it in 10-11.
So with that as a backdrop, and maybe, Mr. Lyons, as you walk by, you can hand me the clicker, and I'll take the next series of slides. One of the major tenets of this budget process, which we brought to you back as early as March, was this whole concept of priority-based budgeting, how we look at all the services we provide as the City of Evanston, compare that to a framework of community priorities, and then do a ranking. And that is the process in which we went through. And there are a number of pieces to this ranking process. The first was comparing the services we provide with the strategic plan. And just to quickly go through the various components of the strategic plan, the first tenet was economic viability. The second, environmental sustainability. The third, strengthening community. And those had various goals associated with them, which I know you're all familiar with. Another point was to compare how the city services compare to the city council's goals, and the list of goals here are what the council adopted for fiscal 2011. We then added an additional priority, which the council asked us to measure from the May 16th council meeting, and that is are those services helping contribute toward making Evanston a safer community. So those were then the functional areas in which each of the city services was rated. Strengthening community, economic viability, environmental sustainability, how it furthered the city council's goals, and how it furthered making Evanston a safer community. We went through the various services that we provide. There were 96 services that were identified, and this breaks them down by department. What we did was look at the name of the service, and this is part of the larger document that's attached to the budget agenda, the name, the description, the staff providing the service, financial information about the service, the mandates for the service, changes and demands for the service in the last few years, if there are alternate service providers, and if there are opportunities with that service that's provided for innovation. So what we did is we took those basic program attributes, the mandated program, cost recovery, increased demand for service, reliance on city to provide the service, and awarded a score of 0 to 4 for each. And then the priority results, the list I've just previously talked about, again, also providing a score there. What we tried to do with each is to have a framework. The city departments each went through each of their services and provided a scoring. That then went to the city's budget team, which reviewed that and made adjustments. Again, in the case of a mandated program, if it was a federal mandate, it got 4 points, a state mandate 3 points, a mandate required by the city government's code 2 points, ordinance or resolution 1 point, the service is not mandated 0. In the area of cost recovery, again, points from 0 to 4 as to how much revenue the service recovered in cost. If there had been a change in demand for service from 0 to 4, the reliance on the city to provide the service. There are some things that we can only provide, and then there are things that are provided by either the public or private sector, and then a scoring from 0 to 4 there. Services and programs based on the relevance to the community priorities. And again, for all of these, if it impacted 3 or more priorities, was a score of 4, and then down to 0. And then this took us to the scoring. And so this is the list of the program inventory. I won't read through every single item, but Brandon, I believe the highest scoring any service could get was 36. Is that correct? So the highest, we had 228s, the neighborhood stabilization program and patrol operations, and then that went down to building plan review, traffic bureau, city manager's office, criminal investigations, emergency telephone system, planning and zoning, and thereon. So you can see that through there. So that takes us through, and what we've tried to do is get a sense for what we should be focusing on, and what I'm proposing to the council we focus on are the lower third of the program inventory scoring. So this is still the upper 2/3, police, parks, utilities, public works, law. So from 65 on are those areas that are in the bottom third, and some of which are already a part of the service changes that we've looked at, and others are not. I will walk through each of those. Parking enforcement, the mental health board and the funding the mental health board provides, the contracts, transactions program within the law department, Parks, Recreation, and Community Services Administration, Parks, Recreation, and Community Service indoor-outdoor recreation programs, Public Works Business District Maintenance, Public Works Snow Removal Operations, Public Works Yard Waste Collection and Disposal, Administrative Services Accounting, Parks and Rec Noise Cultural Arts Center, Parks and Rec Cultural Arts Programs, Public Works Engineering, Administrative Services Revenue Operations, Health, Dental Services, Police Office of Administration, Parks and Rec Horticultural Maintenance, Parks and Rec Fleetwood Jourdain Community Center, Parks and Rec Fleetwood Jourdain Theater, Community and Economic Development, Minority Women and Evanston Business Enterprises, Administrative Services Purchasing, Administrative Services Human Resources, Community and Economic Development, Community Intervention and Emergency Housing, Health Department, Community Health, Law, Administrative Adjudication, Parks and Rec Communications and Marketing, Public Works Fleet Services, Administrative Services Information Technology, Administrative Services School Crossing Guards, Health Vital Records, funding from the City Manager's Office for the Evanston Community Media Center, Administrative Services Payroll, and then the Lighthouse Landing Program at Parks, Recreation, and Community Services. So I think it's important to mention that these are not unimportant services. that that's not the issue of the ranking. The issue of the ranking is how do these services rate for community priorities, and how do these services rate from a cost perspective, and can we do this ourselves? So clearly, as you look at some of these, the accounting function, number 73, we need an accounting function. We need to pay our bills. Are there different ways to do that? Is the city doing that by itself the only way that accounting can be done? No, of course not. Many of the Parks and Recreation programs, while I think this council has said that many of those are valuable in this community, when you compare them to the already established community values, some of them don't rank as high as others. So I think this is not meant to be a be-all and an end-all. It's not meant to say that we're not going to do the bottom third of things here. But I think what it does provide is an opportunity for us to have a discussion about some of these services to see, are we providing them in the best way, most cost-effective way possible. And again, through the 39 service areas that we'd already previously identified, many of these just happen to fall into those same categories for additional discussion. So as we move forward through this budget process and the community dialogue that we're proposing to have during the month of September, we are going to be asking the community, does this sound right to you? Are there things here that don't make sense? Are there things here that should be evaluated and valued in a different way? And we hope that this will be the beginning of a longer community dialogue, not just for this one particular budget cycle, but for the future. I point out at the very bottom of this slide the services provided by the Evanston Public Library. As the council is aware, you have given direction to your staff to work with the library board to sort out next steps as far as the governance of the Evanston Public Library and the budgeting. I can report to you that those discussions continue. I can also report to you is that we do not have solutions to present to the council on next steps regarding governance for the library. So as this process was started prior to Ms. John's departure, we thought it was best just to leave the library services out for the purposes of this exercise, but we also didn't want anyone to think that the valuable services provided by our library in any way were forgotten, so we include them here with that note. The next area was the area of service change ideas, and as the council is aware, there were 39 areas that were identified, and the council authorized us to do some additional work on. What we've done is done that additional work. The detail is included in the attachment to the agenda item, and we would encourage you, members of the community, to look at that over the next few weeks. But what we did do is we did divide these service change ideas into three categories. One are those things that we have learned enough about where we think that it makes sense to pursue and are going to continue to move forward and look to develop specific packages that could be included in the potential in the proposed budget that's coming up that you'll see in the second week of October. A second category, investigate further, are those service change ideas that we've done some initial investigation on, and we feel that there may be promise, but we still don't know enough at this point to commit that it's something we would want to put forward in the proposed budget. There are then also two that we are not pursuing further. One is one that has already come through City Council direction, and that is the Chandler Neuberger Center. So that is no longer under consideration, has been crossed off our list. The other that we are recommending not to pursue at this point is allowing alcohol use in the parks. That we have looked at that, and we feel at this early juncture that any potential revenue is far outweighed by other community standards issues. So we're proposing at this point that those two issues not be considered further. We're also proposing that we add an issue to the list, which we'll talk about in a few moments, and that is looking at the consolidation of the community outreach function in the Parks, Recreation, and Community Services Department with the identical function that's currently provided citywide for the rest of the departments in the city manager's office. So we're proposing that we would add that for further consideration. So what I'd like to do now is ask Joellen Earl and Marty Lyons, and let me give special recognition to Joellen. As you know, Joellen's transitioning from her role as Director of Administrative Services to be leaving the organization at the end of September. She has been working full-time on this work, and I want to commend her for her excellent job leading the team that has prepared all the information that you have before you this evening. Joellen and Marty are going to share their review of these 39 issues, and I reserve the right, Joellen, to jump in for a few of them. So with that, Mrs. Earl, if you'd like to get started.
Thank you. Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of the City Council, City Manager Bobkowitz, and Clerk Green, Joellen Earl. I'm going to talk about the items. I only have one slide. You can have the next one. I'm going to talk about the items that are recommended to pursue at this time. And for people that have source documents that are looking on, I'm actually going to be referring to some text that is printed in an item that was attached to the council agenda. It's the large packet that the city manager spoke of. It's 467 pages. I'm starting on page 8. And I'm going to talk about some of these items that are listed on the slide. The first item that we're recommending that we pursue is looking at employee job classifications for work done. This has a narrow focus. The focus here are for administrative functions, functions citywide administratively as it relates to accounts payable. Also, the city manager's office, the budget function, accounting, payroll, purchasing, and revenue. So those are the areas that we're looking at as far as restructuring and looking at some of those jobs. The second part of that, though, relates to number 3, which is the salary and benefits model for all classifications. That item relates to the salary structure for the entire employee population. And as I indicated in the information that's been provided, that is something that we will be discussing through the collective bargaining process this year about whether or not any of that needs to change. And prior to the collective bargaining process, work will be done, surveys will be conducted to see where our pay scales are in relation to comparable communities and whether or not we need to discuss it in that forum. The next item, and let me back up for a moment. On the two right columns on this slide, you'll see potential savings / revenue enhancement. Some of these items may generate savings and others may generate additional revenue. And as I go through them, I'll explain that. Just to back up, idea number 2 would be a potential savings if there was any restructuring of administrative functions. On number 4, fees and charges for all services, the City Council may remember last year we did a tax analysis of all taxes that are charged by the jurisdiction, and we compared that to local jurisdictions that are close in proximity as well as those that are like size. This year we're proposing to do an analysis of fees and charges for all services. So we are in the process of doing that now, and when the budget is proposed, similar to last year, there will be information about whether or not it's recommended to adjust fees and charges at that time. Item number 5 is enforcement of all city code ordinances, and this relates to looking at all of the city code ordinances and whether or not we're enforcing them to the fullest extent. This is a revenue enhancement item, and one thing that we want to look at is to make sure that we are collecting all fines owed to the city and whether or not any additional fees should be charged. One recommendation here is that we possibly consider an amnesty program for the community for those people that have not abided by the deadlines to have their fees paid. That could generate some income. It would be one time, but it would still be revenue to the general fund. Another one is to look at the rental building registration fee. And if those two items are pursued, the revenue that could be found there is between $250,000 and $350,000. The next item is the shared use of programs and services, and this has to do with the relationships with the area hospitals, with Northwestern, with surrounding communities. That is something that the city manager has been active in pursuing those relationships, as well as many of the directors in the city. One item, and I'll speak to the survey we did with the other communities a little later, relates to whether or not we partner with more shared services with surrounding communities. We did have one community that has expressed interest in talking with us for some potential sharing. The next
and that community is the village of Skokie.
Yes. The next item is increased collections of money owed to the city. We've again done an analysis, and we're looking at all of the resources we have available to make sure that we are collecting the money owed. One thing that we are looking at is increasing the boot fees related to parking, and that's what that figure is there, the $250,000 to $300,000. By increasing those fines, we could generate additional revenue, and we will be coming back with that.
Excuse me, Joelle, and Alderman Burris has a question.
It's actually more of a reference. I know we've been talking about the license plate recognition software, and could we just maybe in a next council meeting get a better understanding of how that would help us in this increased collection of money owed to the city? I think on parking and transportation, we've gotten a little bit of information about that, but probably the rest of the council hasn't. And it seems like that would be a good thing to explain to everyone.
And Alderman Burris, would that be to come back to the full council or go to AMPW or what?
I think full council, as we're moving to the budget season, we talk about possibly buying that software, of how much money that could possibly generate for us when we're looking at trying to enforce all the code and ordinance and increase collection of money.
Sure, and Alderman Burris, members of the council, that also leads to one that's a little bit further down regarding parking enforcement and parking fees. So perhaps, if you wouldn't mind, maybe we'll have Mr. Voss come and talk about both, because the license plate recognition would be a portion of both of those.
That would be fabulous. Thank you.
Okay, the next item, number 11, is Public and Government Cable Access Program. And the range of potential savings there is the amount of money that the entity is paying for a lease, to whether or not all of the funds are used by the city, and if the city took over the service at some point. So that's what that relates to. The next item, the cost of citywide cell phone use. We have a stipend program for certain employees that use phones in their regular business, and the recommendation there is that it be eliminated for most employees. Again, most of these people are not out in the field. They don't have phones with radio capability. This is somebody like me who has a phone, and the city gives me a stipend to offset the fact that I use my personal phone for city business, and that is recommended to be eliminated. The next item goes to what Alderman Burris just raised with regard to the license plate recognition software. The figures there would be a savings, and that is directly related to positions. Through attrition, and this is over the next year or two, so this would not be a 2012 savings. The efficiency that could be realized through creating or through purchasing that software could eliminate 1 to 2 jobs. So that's what that is. One, I think, is presently vacant or will be vacant as a result of a retirement. The license plate recognition software would allow the parking enforcement officers to stay in their vehicles. It would also, if you would read the license plates, it would be able to give a lot of information with regard to whether or not the stickers were purchased, whether or not all of the fines were paid. So as the Alderman already raised, Mr. Voss will come in and give more detail, but generally that's what it is, and that savings relates to positions that eventually may not be needed.
And Mrs. Earl, Alderman Burris, members of the council, the last piece of that is the vehicle sticker itself. And I think we've had some passing conversations that we would hope that by 2014 that we would eliminate the sticker and that the enforcement would be based on the license plate number, saving our residents having to get the piece of cellophane to put on their window, and instead we would be registered by license plate number. So we'll come to talk about that as well.
The next item, idea number 14, relates to the crossing guard program, and this relates to outsourcing that program, and that would be savings. It doesn't mean that we would not be having crossing guards, but there are entities that we could put out an RFP and find a firm that would run that program for the city. The savings there, and actually is potential revenue enhancement as well, relates to 3 items. The first item is there is a staff person that spends a lot of time scheduling the 49 crossing guards, and it would be a reduction in some of in that person's duties, which could either be the person could get more work, or the person could have a potential cutback in hours. This
question.
Mrs. Earl, we always have discussions about crossing guards during the budget, but could you just tell me, if you know, what the hourly rate is for our crossing guards? Do you know what we pay them?
I don't know off the top of my head.
They don't get any benefits, right?
No, they don't.
And they're part-time.
They don't, but they do receive unemployment, and that's a cost that we would avoid. So there are some benefits that we are paying,
Yeah,
but they don't receive vacation or anything like that.
I'd like to know what the going rate is for crossing guards.
Certainly. And Mrs. Earl, what is the annual amount that we pay in unemployment for crossing guards?
It's about $9,000 a quarter.
Okay.
Alderman Fisk has a question, too.
Thank you. Would you just remind me why we pay for crossing guards and the school districts don't?
As we do.
I'll defer on the answer to that question.
I'll give it a try. Alderman Fisk, members of the council, this is a point of contention in every community I've ever worked in. Most school superintendents will tell you they'll worry about what happens within the doors of their school, and that once the student leaves the premises, the responsibility for their safety rests with the city. And in my brief conversations with the superintendent here in Evanston, I've heard a similar refrain. So I think that's a policy discussion in every community, and I think our sense of this right now is that rather than, unless the council directs us, rather than get into that discussion, are there ways to continue to provide the service, keep our students safe, but do it at a reduced cost? And so I think that is what our focus is. And again, we'll provide information through this discussion, and if it makes sense to include in the budget as a proposal in order to balance, we'll do that. And my sense is that will then open up a discussion for the council on this subject.
Alderman Burris.
Alderman Fisk raised my point about the school districts and going back and talking to them again, but
it's only district, the high school pays.
I'm sorry. Yes, and I know we talk a lot about volunteers, and what is the legal reason why we can't work with the PTAs or the schools to have volunteer crossing guards, be it parents, other people involved with the school? Every year I say this. Growing up, the older class people were the crossing guards, the parents were the crossing guards. Why are we spending money when everyone wants to be involved in the community and volunteer? We hear it over and over again. This is a perfect place for adults to have more interaction with kids and older kids to have more responsibility. So let's look at this and tell me if there's a legal reason why we can't. Thanks.
Go ahead, Ms. Earls.
There were two other pieces to the crossing guard. The savings with the vendor was about $175, and then the other side of it is the potential revenue enhancement. When we have a shortage of crossing guards, our PEOs, our parking enforcement officers fill in, and as a result, they're not out writing tickets. So I'm sure that makes some people happy, but the potential revenue loss is about $100,000. So that's where we're coming up with that range. And again, it's both savings and potential revenue enhancement. The next two items relate to administrative services again. And you'll see that theme come through, because when you look at the council priorities and whether or not there's cost recovery, it ranks very low. So the idea of looking at whether or not there could be any reorganization or any contracting in or out of services is what is recommended to be pursued in numbers 15 and 16. Number 17 are properties exempted from property tax. The recommendation there is, again, to look at the list of properties exempted to make sure that that list is current and appropriate, to engage the community possibly to make sure that the properties listed on the list are actually being used for the purpose that they say they're being used for. One idea is to publish the list every year so people can come forward to make sure that the properties that really should be exempted are being exempted. We're not even suspecting that it's not an accurate list, but we do think that that would be one way to make sure that we could go back and double check. And if we can bring more property onto the tax rolls, that would be revenue enhancement.
Alderman Fisk has a question.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm curious, several meetings ago, I believe someone said that you were compiling a list of the tax-exempt properties. Is that correct?
Yeah, it has been included. It's in the packet.
Okay. Do you have a number of what taxes those properties would be paying if they were on the tax rolls? That's my question.
No.
Do you have any rough estimate?
No. We could see if we could figure that out. I think we tried to do that for another project recently, and I'd have to go back and look at the methodology that we used to see if something could be applied here.
Yes, I think Alderman Fisk had asked for the number of properties that Northwestern University had purchased over, I think, about the last 10 years, and for us to estimate the value of the lost property taxes for those. So I think we do have a methodology. And Brandon, I don't know if you can put your finger on the page number of the detail for this item, but we'll do some. There's several questions for follow-up, which we'll provide to you shortly.
Right. It wasn't just Northwestern University property I was interested in. I think it's valuable for the community to understand what the loss and gain is by having property off the tax rolls. I mean, obviously you take a property off the tax rolls because you're getting something back for the existence of that nonprofit, and that's a consideration. But without that number, I think we can't have a well-reasoned discussion about where we go with this. So I'm assuming that through the assessor's website we can figure something out, or there must be someone who has some contact person there that we can
absolutely
come up with some at least reasonable estimate.
Certainly.
Alderman Rainey.
Madam Mayor and Mr. City Manager, I did look through the budget information that came with our packet, but I don't have 400 pages of it. And I'm just wondering, you're saying that we have that backup material?
Yes, we had sent out a link to the council on Friday. It's on the city's website. And again, it was not for the purposes of in-depth discussion. We would not expect you over 4 days to have all that information.
So it's just on the city website. We can go there to look at it, but it didn't come in a packet.
There was a link that was sent on Friday afternoon, separate, that indicated that it was now available on the website.
Aha.
And it's with the information. We're sorry if that wasn't complete
Well, no,
enough.
I'm sure I just missed it, but I keep wondering, where are these 400 pages? Now I know. Could you give me a few minutes while I read them before we go on?
I'm on page.
And we'll
I'm
be
on
back on
page 11.
Thursday afternoon to check in with you.
I'm on page 11 and 467.
Are you going to go through each
No,
one?
I'm almost done.
There's a pull-out on page 13 of our packet.
But no, I have that. Yeah, I did read.
I can, absolutely.
It's on the website next to the council agenda. There's a separate drop. If you look at the city council's agenda page, there's a couple of attachments, and one of them, I think it says service change ideas, is this document. And the cover says city services and service change ideas evaluation.
But through the magic of electronics, I think they want to look at it at their desk. So.
Once you download your packet, I don't go back and look at the link. But I
May we continue, Madam Mayor?
Please continue.
The next item is the Minority Women in Evanston-based business program. And the $60,000 here is, the recommendation is to transfer the salary for the person that is completing that work to the Economic Development Fund, out of the general fund. Number 19 is Community Intervention and Emergency Housing Program. The recommendation here is to look for community partners to complete that service as opposed to the city. The next area is community health initiatives and vital records. The recommendation here to pursue is to look at eliminating the vital records service that the city provides. It is provided by Cook County in Skokie, so it is a duplication. And at this point, it's recommended that we pursue eliminating that function. In addition to that,
excuse me, Alderman Burris has a question.
The number idea 19, Community Intervention Emergency Housing Program. Is there any way that and I don't know the answer, the general assistance from the township, since they have such a surplus of money, that's something that they could take on?
Madam Mayor, Alderman Burris, that's certainly something we could approach the township. One of the projects Mrs. Earle is working on in anticipation, I think, of the council's September 19th meeting is an evaluation of their budget, and so we'd be happy to bring that back.
Great, thank you.
Alderman Rainey has a question too. Sorry.
Well, following up on that, what difference does it make if we're taking money out of our pocket to fund the general fund for that or to fund the township to do that? I think one of the suggestions is that a community organization, that's currently being funded by a variety of sources, do that.
And Madam Mayor, Alderman Rainey, that's one of the options we're looking at, is that could we provide the service with an existing nonprofit doing it rather than that. But again, I think the purpose of tonight is to share that these are issues that we think are worth consideration and that we're continuing to pursue, and we appreciate your feedback as we talk further.
Right, but I have one other question. On the health department, number 23, the vital records, I thought we ceased providing certificates, death certificates, et cetera. We did not do that.
We did not do that.
Did we talk about that?
Yes.
Did we? I'm sorry, what was the question, Alderman Rainey?
I thought that we were no longer providing vital record services.
No, we do. What we've done is we've made a change. City Clerk Green had come to me asking for some additional assistance in his office, and what we've been able to do is relocate the two staff members that were on the lower level providing that service. We've relocated them to the City Clerk's office. They continue to provide the service, but also provide additional administrative support for the City Clerk's office. So that has actually been working out fairly well. One of the things we have to weigh is the vital records is a revenue-generating function. There are administrative needs of the city clerk. If we were to eliminate the service, we may pick up an additional expense to provide additional administrative services for the city clerk. So we're still weighing through that. Another option, and I don't see Ms. Thomas here, but she is also approaching Cook County to see could we offer the service that they offer in Skokie instead offer it here, increase perhaps the customer volume and make some more money off of it. So those are issues that are still being explored. Getting a birth certificate and a death certificate in Cook County, there's Director Thomas, so she can come out and speak a little bit more to this. But there are very few places apparently in Cook County that you can present yourself and get a copy of a birth certificate or a death certificate. And we are one of the few places in Cook County that you can do that. You can only do that here, though, for births and deaths within the city of Evanston. And Director Thomas, I don't know, you heard some of that as you were walking in. How many places can a Cook County resident get a birth certificate or death certificate currently? In person?
Currently, here in Evanston, if you're born or die in Evanston, you can get a certificate electronically. You can also do that if you are a resident of Skokie. And for Cook County, the closest location is Cook County Courthouse.
And then in addition to that, in addition to those locations?
Downtown Chicago.
And that's it?
That's it.
But what I was going to continue to ask was, these revenue enhancements, the 360, don't we make money with birth certificates and death certificates? So how could we make more money by eliminating it? That I don't understand.
Well, I think one of the things we're looking at is what's the balance between there's some additional overhead that has not been equipped to this, and it comes very close to covering its cost, but not all of the cost. So again, we're here this evening with unformed ideas. These are ideas we still think make a lot of sense to pursue, and we think that there may be opportunities. Again, we're looking at service change ideas. There may be an opportunity to change how the vital records service is offered, and we'll keep the council posted in our deliberations.
Alderman Braithwaite has a question.
Sorry about that. That 365 is a really big number, and how did you get to that?
And Alderman Braithwaite, members of the council, there is a community health division within the health department, and so that number, I think, represents more than vital records. There's a manager position, a clerical position. Does it include the dental program as well, or not?
Yeah, I think it does.
I'm sorry, yeah, but so it includes.
It contains two business units: the community health and the vital records. And community health contains the mental health board and the dental, and there was one other thing I think I was going to reference, and the recommendation there is to transfer the oversight of some of those functions to another department.
So again, this is a work in progress. It's not just, I think vital records is there as an illustrative note to know at least a portion of what the community health division provides, but it provides other services and there's other costs associated with it. And maybe I'll take the next one, which is the Noyes Cultural Arts Center, and this would also include the Evanston Arts Center. This has been a subject that the council has discussed a few weeks back. Your direction to me was to continue talking with the current tenants at the Noyes Cultural Arts Center, all of them, as well. The issue of the Evanston Arts Center, the council's direction was that, but also to look at opportunities for sale or long-term lease for other purchases for the Harley Clark Mansion, which is the main facility used by the Evanston Arts Center. They also have studio space at the Noyes Cultural Arts Center. I held a meeting with all of the tenants at the Noyes Cultural Arts Center. It was, I think, the 22nd or 29th of July. I think it was the 29th of July. We had about 2-hour, very spirited discussion on what the future there might be. There are the 4 groups that came to the council with a letter interested in having the entire facility for their use, the Piven Theater, the Next Theater, the Actors Gymnasium, and the Evanston Arts Center. The other tenants, which I believe are about 27, have gathered together with Ken Arlen, who has a orchestra that is based out of the Noyes Cultural Arts Center. There is really no meeting of the minds at this point regarding next steps with Noyes. I've had an opportunity just this afternoon to meet with Nora Dietrich, the executive director of the Evanston Arts Center. They are looking on their own for space outside of the Evanston, the Harley Clark Mansion and the Noyes Cultural Arts Center. So that process has continued. I reiterated that certainly it's not the city's intention to put them out on the street, that if there's an opportunity for a solution that serves the needs of all the organizations, that's where we're going. I told the assembled tenants at Noyes, which I think something I mentioned at the council, that I do not anticipate there being a solution to these issues for the budget for fiscal 12. That the discussions would hopefully continue during the course of 2012, and that by the budget for fiscal 2013, we would have some options to consider for that budget year. So those discussions continue. There's no dollar amounts associated with that, and really the whole purpose of having the discussions regarding the Harley Clark Mansion primarily and really exclusively is the condition of the building. This was not about operational savings, since the city does not have programs specifically in that building. The Noyes Cultural Arts Center, much the same. So we're not looking at operational savings, but again, looking at the buildings themselves. And I can tell you right now that there will not be solutions for either of those facilities presented to you in October with the 2012 proposed budget. All right, so I think that takes us through the ideas to pursue. The next category are the ideas that we still don't know enough about to know if it will make sense to include in the budget for next year or not, but we do feel we know enough to continue research, and Mr. Lyons will take that next list.
Good evening again, Madam Mayor, members of council, Clerk Green, Mr. City Manager. As Wally just noted, these are a little bit longer range for a variety of reasons. They are in that bucket, some because of the sheer scope of the process, and we're not quite there yet on identifying a total savings. Others, just because from a timing perspective, we may not get there. So the first one, youth services, one of the things that we're looking at in this situation is we've had a very big change just this summer as far as our youth services program, and we've seen a lot of successes in the expansion of the program, yet we're not really in a position to expand the funding for the program on a dollar-for-dollar basis. So this budget item is to continue to look at how would we maybe keep our funding level for youth services the same, yet continue this higher level of activity that has created a lot of successes this summer. Now, I'm about to say, I don't think I pushed anything to get that black box up there, but the next one is to take a look at special events. We have a variety of special events in town. For the most part, our special events are self-funded, especially when they are community events. We have what I'd call 3 layers of special events: community events, hybrid events that are community and city funded, and then city events. And our city events, we endeavor to get those completely funded. One of the things that I looked at when going through this was police overtime, for instance, under special events. There's over $350,000 of overtime that is for special duties, special events. Much of this is reimbursed, but we're going to go through this and take a look how much is reimbursed, are there any other things that we can change, and what savings might result. As we referenced earlier, we are going to continue to look at our use of volunteers. I think we're just at the beginning of this. The website is up and active, and we'll be looking at our use of volunteers on a routine basis. We've gone without a a greeter at the Civic Center, and we have volunteers in there, but that used to be staffed by a full and 2 part-time personnel. And that's been several months now without that since the start of the year. And we've managed without that situation. So we will continue to look at the use of volunteers. But one of the things we are going to do is also break up volunteers from interns. We also have a lot of internship programs, and we want to make sure that we're treating those as separate programs, if you will. Our next item for review is something that we did just discuss in great detail at the Economic Development Committee, and that is use of TIF and economic development funds. We didn't necessarily talk about the economic development funds themselves, just TIF, but we have looked at our use of the administrative portions of TIF to make sure that each fund, if we can, cover any of our costs through the utilization of TIF funds, and we are doing that. We think those are at proper levels. But we are also going to then look at, as we've noted with the council, infrastructure projects and economic development projects being funded from our tax increment finance funds. The next item is a combination of 4 items, and that is just for all of the departments where we haven't looked programmatically at their individual operations. Police, fire, library, and utilities. What we're requesting those departments to do is to look at a 3% decrease in their non-personnel and in the areas where it's an inter-fund transfer. So if their costs would impact, say, the general fund in the case of water, we probably won't be looking at a 3% decrease in there. It's a little counterproductive. Separately, we are looking at inter-fund transfers this year as well. But that's just an item. For instance, in the general fund, the police and fire, their non-personnel costs, 3% reduction might save somewhere between $100,000 and $150,000. The city vehicle fleet program is a continual work in process, and we continue to go in the right direction. We have continued to decrease the fleet. This work, though, will go beyond just the fleet. We'll be looking at whether or not there are certain types of vehicles that we should outsource, or whether we can insource, or even whether with a village of Skokie or another partner decide to specialize, where we would do certain vehicles and they would do other vehicles. That helps cut down on our training costs, changes the way we have to stock our supplies, a lot of things that could be beneficial. Certainly could be looked at for our non-emergency vehicles, where having them a little bit farther away at a different garage might not cause that same kind of an operational issue that emergency vehicles might cause. The next couple, 26, 27, and 28, do refer to public works, actually 29 as well. And what we're looking at in these is, as we've talked about, changes in service delivery models. We don't know that we're going to save dollars. Previous speakers tonight have talked about the value of keeping things in-house. So the idea is, for street maintenance programs, for our city alley maintenance, I tie those two a little bit more. That's 26 and 28 together, to look at how we can continue to do those projects as efficiently as possible. As you may know, right now we do a lot of grading of alleys ourselves, or we might do that kind of work on the gravel alleys differently than outsourcing or putting in the concrete alleys through the use of a vendor. So we will continue to analyze those to see how we might be able to reduce our costs, provide the services a little more efficiently. The refuse, recycling, yard waste, and street sweeping programs, just like to identify those individually. Again, service change. We're not talking about cutting a program, but street sweeping has been one that, because it's a smaller operation that many communities have looked at, most communities will have 1 or 2 or 3 at tops street sweepers. And so the potential for looking at that either in an outsourced or in a combined fashion with other communities is a simpler process than maybe the entire refuse or yard waste or recycling process. Engineering and streetlight services. Our engineering and streetlight services. This covers not only our street lights, but our traffic signals, and also our engineering services where we do the plans for a water main project or a street project in-house. We still do several of those in-house, and you'll see sometimes where we'll bring contracts to the council with no engineering services. It'll just be the construction costs, and we're doing all of the engineering in-house. So we'll be looking at that to see whether or not if both the engineering and the construction is outsourced, or whether or not we want to look at. I've worked in communities where we had an 8-foot wide patcher, and we could do an entire street. It takes a little longer than the really big ones that the private sector has, but it gives you a lot more flexibility. So we'll be looking at those. And whether or not, if we did that, whether we could provide those services to other communities. So number 30, what we're looking at is, it's kind of a big one. All recreation programs, costs, revenues, registration, et cetera. And one of the things that I had a nice discussion with Parks, Rec, and Community Service staff. One of the things that sets us apart from maybe our closest neighbors is we do offer a lot of scholarships for our programs, so the amount of cost recoverable that we see may not be directly related to the fees we're charging. Because if we have 10 people in a program, but only 8 are paying for the program, it may not come across that we pay the same as Glenview, the same rate, but they have nobody on scholarship in their program. So our evaluation will be fairly complex when we get down into that, looking at all of the fees for recreational services. But that being said, that was one of the ones that we did have a number in there. The numbers are large. We have a lot of services. So there are, while we say 1.5 million to 2.4 million, it could be some smaller number where we could start to look at these in detail.
Mr. Lyons, one of the suggestions from the Chandler and Newberger parents was that we have some form that allows people to pay more if they want to fund scholarships.
Thank you.
And Madam Mayor, members of the council, what we're also looking to do is bring to you recommendations on threshold levels for the balance between what fees and charges cover for certain programs and what tax revenues cover. And we think that it would make sense to have 3 different categories: programs for youth, programs for adults, and programs for seniors. And so that is likely going to be something we're going to look very closely at, and that we would then ask the council as a policy decision to agree on a percentage for those 3 areas and then adjust the fees accordingly.
Our next item changed a little bit in July. We had looking at forestry services, and we saw quite a bit of what in-house forestry services can do as far as having that flexibility and working with ComEd and with all of our partners. So we understand that there is value of that service in-house. That being said, that when you add up the not to do with anything with planting or Dutch elm or any of those, we spend $1.5 million in forestry. So there is something to look at there, whether or not there's any way to look at any of those services and compare ourselves to how other communities that are also tree cities, how they handle their large trees, how they handle tree planting, all of those items. Parks maintenance, contracting in and out. This is in many ways akin to our facilities management, whether or not we would have that contracted in and out. It would not be, I don't think this covers, we're not talking about the forest in the parks, but we are talking about routine maintenance, mowing, as well as playground maintenance and things of those of that nature. Lighthouse Landing, I think that the city manager referred to that a little bit before. And the same with the Ecology Center. That's not necessarily an item where we're looking at, we're going to sell the Ecology Center and that's going to save a lot of money. That's really just a business decision of what businesses will we be in as a part of the city.
And Madam Mayor, members of the council, I met last week with the Environmental Association. They have proposed a memorandum of understanding between the city and the association that would more clearly delineate the responsibilities of both parties moving forward in the areas of fundraising and operation and capital improvements. And I will tell you, it's a spectacular proposal from the Environmental Association. So my hope is that we will bring that to you prior to the budget. I've asked them to draft from their points a memorandum of understanding that we could bring to you hopefully sometime during the month of September and then move forward. But it's really a credit to the Environmental Association stepping up and understanding that, by them agreeing to do some things and the city agreeing to do some things, that we could increase services and programs, allow them to raise additional money, and see some of that money go back into the facility. So I want to make it very clear that with the Ecology Center, it's not a matter of closing, it's not a matter of reducing, but again, it is really a service change and how we can better partner with the Environmental Association. I really want to commend them for their efforts in this area over the last several months, and you should expect to see an MOU between the city and the Environmental Association during the month of September.
Just a couple more to go. With these changes in some of our operations, there could be more space than is currently available. We've talked about trying to get parts of the township or other parts of our governance within the Civic Center, and whether or not those could be, they might be paying or they might no longer be paying where they're currently at. In either venue, there would be a savings on the tax dollar. So whether or not that's going to be a city savings or somewhere else on the tax bill, our hope is that when we look at this, this was just based on a 40 by 100 feet space, which we've got a couple that aren't quite that big, given current rents, that we could look at somewhere around $50,000 in savings. And again, it might be the avoidance of a cost, not us collecting rent. We'll have to see how that plays out. Lastly, let's see here. I just want to make sure I didn't get off of my page. We have the department-wide efficiencies. I already hit that. That was one of 4. Water sales to other communities. Mr. City Manager, do you want to give any update, or would you like me to provide a summary?
Madam Mayor, members of the council, as I think you know, we have been in discussions with the Northwest Water Commission about different models for moving forward with our relationship with them. We've asked the commission to get back to us. I believe the deadline we asked was for the end of this week. This was from a request that we made about 4 or 5 months ago. So I think the opportunities for water sales to other communities are now crystallizing as to what our options are. My sense is there'll be some information included in the proposed budget, what those next steps would be, and then would be coming back to the council probably immediately following the budget process to move forward with expediting or have you review a plan and then hopefully move forward with that plan to allow us to take the infrastructure steps that would be necessary to expand our water sales.
And then lastly, as we continue to look at integrating all of our information, whether it be on our website or our direct outreach, there's an opportunity where we might be able to integrate some of our outreach with respect to Parks, Recreation, and Community Services and other city services. Both City Manager's Office and Recreation perform this function, and we're going to look at whether or not we can integrate those together for some savings with still the same level of deliverables. So as the manager noted before, we had a couple that fell off the table completely, alcohol sales at city facilities and Chandler Newberger. And with that, we come back to community service comparisons.
We did a survey of various communities, and I think, Mrs. Earle, in the interest of time, I'll just go through this.
Alderman Burris has a question.
Yeah, I remember voting on the Chandler Newberger Center. I did not remember the council voting on the alcohol sales at city facilities. Did I? And I may.
No, you did not. Our recommendation this evening, and at the conclusion of the presentation, we would ask the council to confirm that this is still the direction you want to go in. And so really the only change that we're saying with this list of 39, if I can go back, is to take one additional off the list, and that was the alcohol sales at city facilities, and to add one to the list, and that is number 40, centralized community information and engagement. So that would be, at the conclusion of the presentation, we would ask for the council's concurrence.
Okay, I was just wondering did that come from just staff thinking it was a bad idea, or where did it come from? Okay, so it's just a staff recommendation.
That is correct. All of this is just staff's recommendations.
Fabulous.
And so if the council has additional or different direction at the conclusion of this presentation, please let me know.
Great. I appreciate the clarification.
Alderman Rainey.
However, we do allow, when you say alcohol sales, you do not mean, do you, the use of alcohol at city facilities?
This would be the expand. I mean, this was not a fleshed out recommendation, but it would be, I think, expanding the existing role of the sales of alcohol in parks beyond what is currently lawful.
Okay, but it says facilities, and I'm thinking Levy Center has weddings.
Right, and again, this is the idea of expanding beyond what we currently allow.
Okay, but that's
Mr. Gaynor's here, and he can run through what is currently allowed in city facilities.
What you're saying makes sense, but not what you've got written. The description, alcohol sales at city facilities, no. And that's not really what you mean by that.
Well, we should probably say expansion of alcohol sales. That perhaps would be a more accurate. Since we're proposing taking it away, if it doesn't get taken away, we'll change the wording in the future, but it would be the expansion of alcohol sales. All right, Madam Mayor, I'll just go on.
Go ahead.
We had come to you and said that we were looking to survey communities. We had brought to you 8 communities in Illinois and an additional 5 communities around the country. We sent out fairly comprehensive surveys. We did not hear back from any of the communities outside of Illinois. And for those within Illinois, we heard back from Glenview, Schaumburg, Skokie, and Wilmette. We found that all community surveys are delivering the services we provide, with the exception of recreation, park maintenance, and the minority women in Evanston business program. All community surveyed are contracting out some or all of the following services: fleet maintenance, refuse recycling and yard waste, forestry, and street and alley maintenance. And some community surveys are contracting out portions of their administrative services, accounting, and computer technical support. So it was an interesting exercise. Unfortunately, I don't know that we learned a whole lot. So we promised you we would do that. We promised we'd come back with the information, and that's what we discovered. There's additional information in the larger document that provides more detail about the survey that we did. So where do we go from here? As the council approved at your last meeting a budget calendar, we're proposing a next phase of this during the latter part of August through September to receive citizen input. One part we didn't talk about at the last meeting was the next stage of the Engage Evanston process. We are looking that we would start that. This will be a month-long process from August 22nd to September 22nd. We will have an opportunity for residents to go on the website to be able to express their opinions about what is now 38 service change ideas, and to not only provide written comments but also do the thumbs up and thumbs down that they did previously. We're also going to be working on a model for residents to provide feedback on the service prioritization model, and we're still working on that. And people will be able to not only use the web, but they'll also be able to call us on 311, send us information, as they did at the exercise we did in May. We know that not everyone's on the internet. We've used newspaper advertisements before, which we'll be doing again toward the latter part of August. We'll also have a plan to reach out to community members at various locations, as we did in August, in front of grocery stores and the train stations, asking folks between August 22nd and September 22nd to provide feedback to us. We do have 2 citizen input sessions planned for Saturday, September 17th and Thursday, September 22nd. Lynn Monti is here. Lynn, if you recall, Lynn did the community engagement process for us back in, I guess it was the beginning of 2010 for the 10-11 fiscal year, and we've asked Lynn to come back and do that process again for us, so she'll be participating, leading the discussions on the 17th and the 22nd. We also have planned the City Council goal setting for September 12th, and our plan is to submit the proposed budget to you on October 7th. A lot of information. Certainly, the purpose of our purpose this evening was to provide a general overview to let you and the community know that the information has been compiled in a large detailed document that is available for review, and our plan would then be to go out through August 22nd through September 22nd, get additional feedback, which will then lead to the proposed budget in October 7th. So, Madam Mayor, we're asking for general direction from the council. If this seems like we're on the right track, we'll continue to move forward. If there are issues that you feel need to be added or deleted, we would ask for some feedback this evening on that.
Alderman Fisk.
Well, Wally, I think you're on the right track. I wanted to thank you and thank Mrs. Earle also for, and Marty as well, for all of this. I think the city services template was excellent. And whether we agree or not with the various conclusions, I think, spelling them out in such a clear manner and what your thinking is really, really helpful to the discussion. So that's great. And I'm going to look at all 475 pages because I don't have anything else to do. 67. How many? 460. Okay. All right. I will tell you that you spelled Newburgh incorrectly, so I have been paying attention. But seriously, I think this is a huge help, not only to us but also to the public. And I would just encourage everyone. I know that there will be a lot of public comment, but everyone just kind of go through this and see. What the thought process was. The other thing that I think is just exceptionally good is that with a relatively new staff, going through a process like this really helps you to understand the community so much better, and I think that's an important thing to happen. So thanks to everyone who's been involved in this.
Alderman Tandem.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I also like to say this was a great presentation. I appreciate all the work that went into it. I'm sure there was plenty of work behind all of this. I'm not opposed to looking into the matter of increased alcohol sales at city facilities. I think I'm not sure the downside, and I'm not exactly sure what all of our laws entail at this point, but would certainly like to entertain a discussion about that.
And Alderman Tennant, members of the council, I'd like to get, I don't know necessarily need a vote, but if the council feels that we should continue to look at it, we'd be happy to. I'm seeing one nod and some other, and Madam Mayor, it's up to you if you'd like to take a vote or if you'd just like to get some general.
I'd like to say something as the liquor commissioner. I'm not opposed to inside city facilities, but in some of what you've written, it sounded as if we might consider doing it in the parks, and I am opposed to that. Selling in the parks.
So would you like us to look at...
Concur. Alderman Rainey.
One of the things, selling alcohol in the parks sounds ominous to me, but what does not sound unreasonable is as we do more and more with food trucks, and I think we are going to do more and more with food trucks, there was discussion about the Brummel Park event, which I don't think you could have any more fun or have a better success of having a beer truck. Now that wouldn't be in the park. That would be on the city street like the food trucks were. But the beer would have been consumed in the park. We decided not to do it on our first trip out. But we allow the sale of alcohol at the Custer Street Fair, which is a city street, and I think other events around town, those kind of events. So I think we should at least talk about it.
I would never oppose talking about it.
Yeah, well, I don't think we should be closed-minded about it. I don't think we should sell beer in our parks.
Thank you,
But
Alderman
I don't have trouble selling beer at the curb. And then walking into the park with it. But because it's all part, I mean, it's really part of development and excitement about the community. I mean, you know, there is nothing evil about a glass of beer, unless, of course, you know.
It's 10 glasses of beer.
We just approved a distillery in our town. We're starting to get a reputation of being sophisticated. So I'm just saying that I think we should talk about it. I don't think we should rule it out.
I don't object to talking about it, but we may differ.
Okay, that's okay.
All right.
So, Madam Mayor, I think what I'm hearing is we should at least continue to look at it, and we'll take it off the no list and,
That's all we're doing.
and put it on the first, look at it a little bit more.
Yeah.
That, Madam Mayor, is that a fair?
That's a good analysis.
All right. Is there any other direction, Madam Mayor, from the council?
Seeing none, I think you have your direction.
Thank you.
Alderman Rainey, go ahead.
And that is that we have got to stop scheduling these kinds of issues on council nights. I thought we had already agreed to that.
And
We have not even touched any of the other items on the agenda, and it's already 10:35, and I'm going to ask for a brief recess before we get into it.
All right, we'll take a 5-minute recess. We're going to see if my knee can get up. Linda? Thank you, Alderman Braithwaite. We now have a technical issue. We can't. All right, thank you.
All right. Thank you, Madam Mayor. The first item on the consent agenda is approval of the minutes of the regular council meeting of July 18 and also minutes of July 25. Under Administration and Public Works, the City of Evanston payroll, we request you approve it through July 31st in the amount of $2,750,112.68. The City of Evanston bills through August 9, 2011, in the amount of $3,466,890.45. Credit card activity for the period ending June 30th is $98,049.94. The Administration and Public Works Committee recommends that the City Council authorize the manager to execute a contract in response to bid 1240 to award the Clark Street brick sidewalk replacement and the Emerson Green Bay intersection improvement project to the lowest responsive and responsible bidder, Schroeder and Schroeder, in the amount of $352,244. Funding is from the Washington National TIF project, $255,000 for the downtown project, and the capital improvements fund for the Emerson Green Bay project at $100,000. The committee also asks the council authorize the city manager to execute a sole source contract with Malcolm Perney to update the I'm going to take this off the consent agenda, the water cost service rate and fee study. Next, the committee asks your approval to recommend that the council authorize the city manager to execute a contract for the base bid plus alternate one for tuck pointing and masonry restoration project at the Lorraine Morton Civic Center to restore masonry LLC in the amount of $62,600. The capital improvement program will fund this project. Next, the Liquor Commissioner recommends the City Council adoption of Ordinance 64011. On July 13, the Liquor Control Review Board convened a hearing to consider amending Class V liquor license to permit licensees to sell liquor other than beer and wine. Consideration arose from a request by the only Class V licensee, D&D Finer Foods. This is for introduction tonight. The committee asks, the Corporation Council recommends introduction and adoption of Ordinance 68011. This ordinance repeals Ordinance 82010, but still imposes the solid waste transfer station fee applicable to the Viola transfer station. Madam Mayor, I'm going to move introduction, and the committee chair will handle the adoption of this ordinance. Next is A6, which is recommendation of the City Council authorize the mayor to submit comments and objections to the Illinois EPA regarding Veolia's recent permit requests relative to the Veolia transfer station. Next, item A7, we recommend that the City Council authorize the City Manager to publicly offer for sale through public auction, Obanoff Auction Service, various city vehicles and equipment based on Ordinance 63011. The vehicles and equipment are presently out of service. This is for action tonight. We also ask your approval of Ordinance 62011, amending Title 4, Chapter 22 of the City Code regarding demolition taxes. The ordinance will provide a waiver process for properties that involve demolition without possible redevelopment and properties that recycle demolished materials. This is for action. The Planning and Development Committee requests your approval of the Citizen Advisory Committee's recommendation on public place names and recommends Resolution 47R11 to designate the portion of Emerson Street between Maple Avenue and Oak Avenue with the honorary street name Emerson Branch YMCA in honor of the Emerson Street Branch YMCA. Next is another designation. The Citizens Advisory Committee on Public Place Names recommends City Council approval of Resolution 48R11. This will designate the portion of Chicago Avenue between Greenleaf Street and Lee Street with the honorary street name Joseph Levy Jr. Way. The Advisory Committee on Public Place Names also recommends the City Council approval of Resolution 49R11, which designates the portion of Maple Avenue between Davis Street and Grove Street with the honorary street name sign J. Rogasich Way. Planning and Development requests your approval of Resolution 46R11, a consolidation of 2 lots of record with 1 zoning lot. John Cara and Joan Cherry, property owners, seek to consolidate a single-family resident lot at 729 Sheridan Road with a vacant lot to the north. Next, that's for action. Next is ordinance, let's see, which one is this? is this going to remain? Oh, this is for introduction only. Next is P5. We recommend your approval of the proposed ordinance 67011, which establishes domestic animal daycare center and kennel uses within the city as allowable special uses in the following zoning districts: business B1, B2, B3, and B1A, and commercial districts C1, C1A, and C2. Mixed use, MXE and MUE, and industrial I1, I2, and I3. This is for introduction. Next is Ordinance 66011, which grants major variations necessary for the construction of a cultural facility at 1026 David Street in the D2 Downtown Retail Core District. I'm moving introduction, and the committee chair will move for action with an amendment. P7 is Office Depot. This is going to be off the consent agenda, Madam Mayor. Sorry. Next is Ordinance 61011. As part of the review process to develop its 2011-13 work plan, the Housing Commission recommends that the ordinance be adopted to align with current responsibilities. The Housing Commission has reviewed and approved the proposed changes. This is for action. Under Human Services Committee, the Township Supervisor recommends City Council approve the township bills, payroll, and medical payments for the month of July in the amount of $183,955.43. Staff recommends approval of reallocations of HPRP funds among participating agencies. Funding is provided by the Department of Housing and Urban Development in the amount of $801,454. This is the Homelessness Prevention and Rapid Rehousing Grant. It's for action. We recommend, the Human Services Committee recommends approval of allocations of 2011 Emergency Shelter Grant funding totaling $84,885, $80,645 to 4 social service agencies which provide housing and services for individuals and families who are homeless or at risk of homelessness, and the $4,240 to the City of Evanston for grant administration. The funding source is the city's 2011 Emergency Shelter Grant entitlement allocation from HUD. Next, Ordinance 49011. Staff submits for review and consideration the adoption of this Ordinance 49011, provisionally amending Titles 8, 9, 10 to the City Code. At the August 1, 2011 meeting of the Human Services Committee, the committee noted the length and complexity of the code and amended in this installment, and requests that the council review this carefully before its passage. So this is for introduction. We can have a good discussion at the next meeting on this matter. Under other committees, the Housing and Community Development Act Committee recommends approval of Resolution 45R11, which is a substantial amendment to the city's 2011 action plan and funding reductions in the 17 CDBG allocations necessitated by the city's 2011 CDBG grant of $1,753,386, which is a reduction of $341,794 from the estimated CDBG grant used to develop the plan. This was a major hit. Under O2, the Economic Development Committee recommends to the City Council the allocation of balance of funds awarded to Dodge and Dempster Merchants Groups in October 2010 by City Council to be shared with all merchants in the area now known as West Village. The remaining balance is $9,000 to be shared with these businesses. The Economic Development Committee also recommends approval of the revision of scope of the facade improvement project for Oceanique, located at 505 Main Street. Oceanique is requesting a facade improvement reimbursement in the amount of $10,000. The total expenditures for work performed total $20,022, which is less than the original $37,500. The Economic Development Committee also requests your approval of $65,564.90 in funding for a 12-month period commencing July 1, 2011 through June 30, 2012 to the North Shore Convention and Visitors Bureau. This is the same amount that's been provided for the past 3 years. Funding is from the Economic Development Partnership account. From the Rules Committee and the Playground and Recreation Board, a recommendation to approve Ordinance 54011, which amends portions of Title VII, Chapter 9 of the City Code relating to the Playground and Recreation Board to be called hereinafter Evanston Park and Recreation Board. This is for action. Madam Mayor, under appointments, you've been busy. To the Lad Arboretum Committee, Kathy Biddle. The Library Board, Sergio de los Reyes. Preservation Commission, Thomas Hagensick. To the Mayor's Youth Task Force, Vernon Clark, Reverend Michael Dennis, Seth Green, Naria Santa Lucia, Richard Mosley Jr., Sam Patinio, Joey Roger, and Wendy Weaver. With that, Madam Mayor, I move approval or adoption of the consent agenda.
Thank you. Alderman Holmes?
Madam Mayor, I just wondered on the youth task force, is that Mark Dennis or is another Michael Dennis?
That would be Mark Dennis.
Just so we can have it.
Thank you. Is there a second? It's been moved and seconded to pass the consent agenda. City Clerk, would you call the roll?
Alderman Tindem. Aye. Alderman Rainey.
Aye.
Alderman Burris. Aye. Alderman Fisk. Aye. Alderman Braithwaite. Aye. Alderman Alderman Holmes.
Aye.
Sorry. 6-0.
6-0, the consent agenda passes. Alderman Holmes, could we have Administration and Public Works?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. A3.2, approval of the contract award for the Malcolm Pyrenees to update the 209 water cost of service rate and fee study. This would be funding for this work would be from the Water Fund in the amount of $22,330. The account has a budget allocation of $81,000 for 2011, of which $30,000 was designated for the cost of service. I would move approval.
It's been moved and seconded.
Madam Mayor.
Alderman Rainey.
I gave some thought to this, and I just think it's a waste of money, and I plan to vote against it. I don't have any real strong feelings other than I think it's just not necessary at this time.
Thank you. Does anyone else have anything to say? All right. City Clerk, could you call the roll?
Alderman Tindem. Aye. Alderman Rainey.
No.
Alderman Burris.
Aye.
Alderman Fisk. Aye. Alderman Braithwaite. No. Alderman Holmes.
No.
That's 3-3.
The mayor, I believe, gets...
Point of order, Madam Mayor.
Yes, Alderman Rainey.
Is there some rule that 5 aldermen have to vote for something in order for it to pass? It's a little known rule.
City Attorney.
No, I think it's...
Madam Mayor, members of the council, Mr. Clerk, Council Rule 18.3 stipulates that all ordinances and authorizations to expend or disperse money shall be passed only by a roll call vote duly recorded. 5 votes.
I guess it's not quite so little known.
It is little known, but I know it.
Oh, good for you. All right, so it fails.
Okay. Ordinance 68-011, solid waste transfer station fee. I would want to move to suspend the rules for introduction and action.
Second.
I think it was introduced, didn't you?
It was introduced. Okay, well,
Just suspend the rules for
to
action.
suspend the rules for action.
Second.
It's 8-3.
It's been moved and seconded to suspend the rules for action on 8-3.
8-3. I mean 8-5.
8-5.
I'm sorry. It's
I
8-5.
thought, yeah, okay. On the ordinance for the solid waste transfer station fee. City Clerk, would you call the roll?
Alderman Tindem. Aye. Alderman Rainey.
Aye.
Alderman Burris.
Aye.
Alderman Fisk.
Aye.
Alderman Braithwaite. Alderman Holmes.
Aye.
6.
6-0. The rules are suspended.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Then I would move that the ordinance 68-011 would upon the suspension of the rules be approved. This ordinance repeals ordinance 82-010, but still imposes the solid waste transfer station fee applicable to the Veolia transfer station. And this ordinance shall be retroactive to December 17th, 2010, which was the effective date of the now repealed ordinance 82-0-10.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. City Clerk, would you call the roll?
Alderman Tindem. Aye. Alderman Rainey.
Aye.
Alderman Burris.
Aye.
Alderman Fisk.
Aye.
Alderman Braithwaite. Alderman Holmes.
Aye.
6-0.
6-0. Ordinance 68-011 passes.
That completes my report, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Alderman Holmes. Alderman Wilson is not here. Who would like to take planning and development?
I have it.
Alderman Rainey.
Madam Mayor, I'm going to move to suspend the rules at the request of Alderman Wilson, or at the support of Alderman Wilson, who could not be here, but this has to do with his ward, for ordinance 66-011, major variations necessary for the construction of a cultural facility at 1026 Davis Street in the downtown to retail core district. And
It's been moved and seconded to suspend the rules. City Clerk, would you call the roll?
Alderman Tindem. Aye. Alderman Rainey.
Aye.
Alderman Burris.
Aye.
Alderman Fisk.
Aye.
Alderman Braithwaite. Alderman Holmes.
Aye.
6-0.
6-0. The rules are suspended.
Madam Mayor, I would like to move approval of ordinance 66-011, and then I would like to offer an amendment.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Go ahead with the amendment.
Okay. The amendment would be, if you'll look at page 201 online, under section 4, parking lease. If Mr. City Attorney, listen to this because I might get it wrong. Under section 4B, parking lease, there is a requirement that a certain number of spaces be rented within a certain distance from this location from the city garage. And the developer offered or requested an amendment to that, which would include something along the lines of, or contract for comparable spaces with the same requirements and restrictions. How does that sound? Is that okay?
Alderman Fisk.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have some wording that Mr. Griffin offered to me, and I believe the city attorney has looked at this and approved it.
Oh, it would have been nice if they'd given it to me, but that's okay.
It's on page 202, under section B, the fifth line down. the line begins reserved for the handicapped, comma, and in the city's Sherman Plaza parking garage or such other location as may be permitted per section 6-16-2- is that 1? B-1 of the Evanston zoning ordinance.
All right, is that?
That's fine.
That's
I mean,
fine.
I was waiting for somebody to give me that information, but it doesn't matter as long as it's made. All right, so did you move that, and was it seconded?
Second.
All right, so I think we should take a vote on the amendment.
All right, let's vote on the amendment. City
those-
Clerk?
Do we have to do a roll call?
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It passes.
All right, I move approval of the amended ordinance.
Second.
Been moved and seconded, and seeing no lights for further discussion, City Clerk, would you call the roll?
Alderman Tindem. Aye. Alderman Rainey.
Aye.
Alderman Burris.
Aye.
Alderman Fisk.
Aye.
Alderman Braithwaite. Alderman Holmes.
Aye.
6-0.
6-0, the ordinance passes.
I have one more. Madam Mayor, Office Depot has filed a request for an appeal on July 25 of the decision of the Sign Review and Appeals Board denying a sign variation for Office Depot store at 2722 Green Bay Road. Planning Development Committee has two options, and the committee voted 2-1 to adopt option 2, which is to set a date for a hearing to occur at a subsequent Planning and Development Committee meeting to consider the appeal, and we included as the date the September 26th meeting of the Planning and Development Committee to hold that appeal. So I move the council accept that. I believe the council has to agree to that.
All right.
Option.
Been moved and seconded to
Could I
approve
just say one-
option 2.
All right. I did get a communication from Alderman Grover that I should mention. She did not mention anything about the appeal, but indicated that she did support the Sign Review and Appeal Board's decision, but I don't think that has anything to do with whether or not we should support an appeal. And Alderman Holmes and I felt that it can't hurt to hear the business's needs and requirements for this sign, since we weren't at the meeting.
I'm not going to disagree with your decision. I just am going to tell you about my failed efforts as 7th Ward Alderman. I was asked by residents after the Dominick's, long after the Dominick's sign was put in, to come with them to discuss the sign with Dominick's because they could see it across the train tracks. And so after an hour's discussion, we came up with with Dominick's, with what I thought was a wonderful compromise. And we agreed to Dominick's would pay for the cost of planting trees that would grow up high enough to cover the sign. And I called Paul D'Agostino to tell him the wonderful news, and he told me that, yes, the trees would grow exactly to the height that the neighbors said they would, and yes, that was a wonderful idea, except they would never reach that height in that spot. And I said, why? He said ComEd would cut them down because they would hit the ComEd wires. So don't come up with my solution because it didn't work.
All right, we just want to listen. That's what our vote. Alderman Holmes and I both had the same opinion, that we wanted to listen. That's it.
All right, well, it's been moved and seconded to go with option 2, and I do not think that we need a roll call. So all in favor of option 2, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, 5-1. The motion passes.
That completes my report.
Thank you. And there's nothing off the consent agenda and anything else, is there? I do not think so. All right, that gets us to call of the wards. Before call of the wards, there's one thing I would like to add. that I forgot to say earlier, I'd like to thank Northwestern University for the ambulance that I hope none of us need, but it is truly a wonderful gift. Call of the wards, starting with Alderman Tendon.
No report tonight, Madam Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Alderman Rainey.
Madam Mayor, I don't really have a report other than to say that the event at Brummel Park was wonderful, if I haven't already said that. But to talk about some outages. Again, yesterday, my neighborhood and over 300 other customers on the south end of town were out for a couple of hours. I have no idea why. The weather was beautiful. Today we read that the north side was out. So the time has come when we just have to do something about this. In all the years that I've been around here and all the years you all have lived here, and I heard tonight how important it is that we've all lived here a long time, nobody can remember this kind of trouble. I mean, it's horrendous. Businesses suffer. People suffer. It's ridiculous. There's no other explanation other than it's just ridiculous. And I would like to refer. I'm not going to refer to a committee. I don't think I'm going to refer to the city manager. A request that he come up with some ideas for going forward and dealing with this. I can't believe for 1 minute, just like I can't believe with Veolia, that there's absolutely nothing we can do. There's got to be something we can do. And so I'm looking to his professionalism and expertise, himself and his staff, to come up with something, some way we can move forward and resolve some of these issues. So, thank you.
And Madam Mayor, Alderman Rainey, once I do that, bring it back to the full council for discussion.
Thank you, Alderman Rainey. Alderman Burris.
No report.
Thank you. Alderman Fisk.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just wanted to inform the council and everyone that the next First Ward meeting is going to be Tuesday, September 6th, 7 to 9 p.m. at the Evanston Public Library. And we're going to be sending out notices, so I hope everyone can attend. Secondly, I'd like to ask the city manager to check into the comments made by Linda Balla tonight at Citizen Comment about the maintenance and cleanliness of the downtown library. Thanks.
Thank you. Alderman Braithwaite.
Just really quick, I'd like to thank the residents of the Second Ward that came out to our Second Ward meeting last Thursday evening and provided such a spirited discussion. This Saturday, I will be meeting with the neighbors of the Lake Brown Neighborhood Block Club at their block party. That's going to be August 13th from 1 to 5 on the 1400 block of Gray. And then just something I want to raise as concern is going through the budget, and I think this probably affects the demographics of the 2nd, 5th, and 8th Ward. I am a little bit concerned about some of these areas, the MBE program, the Community Intervention Emergency Housing Program, the Community Health Initiatives and Vital Records Department, as well as the outsourcing of the Public Works employees. They do have a great impact, particularly on the demographics of the 2nd, 5th, and 8th Ward, and I just encourage all the residents to come out and engage in the process. If you are concerned about these services, I really hope that you come out and pay attention to the budget calendar and let your voices be heard. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman. Alderman Holmes.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just would like to say ditto to Alderman Braithwaite's comments on the budget items, some of those that still need further investigation. Certainly am interested in those that affect places like Fleetwood when we look at and know that if you look at the scoring across the board, they are equal everywhere except recovering costs, and we know why that kind of thing happens. So I'm just hoping that people will come out and voice their opinions on that. Also, the regular monthly meeting of the Fifth Ward will be next Thursday, the 18th. It's our regular ice cream social, and our special guest will be the 311 guest. So if you want to know more about 311, then come on over to us at Fleetwood and have some ice cream. And then, Madam Mayor, I'd just like to personally thank you for agreeing to honor Sergeant Dunn this evening. I think that is something that we need to do more of when we know about it. When we don't know about it, we can't do anything about it. But that is a service to our country, and I personally thank you for doing that.
Well, I thanked his mother for letting us know.
Yes.
All right, would someone like...
Madam Mayor, we would ask that the council not meet in executive session this evening.
Yay.
Alderman Rainey?
Yeah, I just wanted to get one point of
I
clarification.
think we would agree with you, City.
I agree with that, too. But there have been several comments tonight and earlier from people opposing the outpost at Dominic's about how at one time we required Dominic's to have a special cash register and an enclosure for the sale of liquor separate from the cash registers for the sale of food and other items. My recollection is when we first passed the ordinances allowing the sale of alcohol in grocery stores, that we required that the sale be separated from the sale of all other items. And it got to the point where we watched this, because we were new at it, and we watched the progress of the stores and their responsibility for the sale of alcohol. And at some point, somebody came to us and said, look, is this really necessary? I think it was really the consumers who said, look, I have to go over here to buy my beer, and then I have to go here to buy my chips, and that just doesn't make any sense. So we amended the ordinance to exclude that requirement. So I'm not sure that it was something special for Dominic's. I think it was something that we had for all of our stores.
Could I ask a comment? Alderman Rainey, do you remember when there was an Osco's on on Church and Sherman, and they had to put a separate little store?
It was exactly the same issue, but that was the only way they could separate. Yes, absolutely.
Right, I remember that, but I wasn't on the council then.
No, but then after a few years, we abandoned that requirement. And then, of course, Osco came down.
Right. So you remember those things when you lived in Evanston for a long time.
Could we have a motion to adjourn? City Clerk?
Alderman Tindem. Aye. Alderman Rainey. Aye. Alderman Burris. Aye. Alderman Fisk. Aye. Alderman Braithwaite. Aye. Alderman Holmes.
Aye.
6-0.
We are adjourned.